evening, everybody, with some accentuated hand gestures, as always. And welcome back after a 2-week hiatus to the Ventauri Pro Series for the inaugural season of this championship. We've had 4 races so far. All of them have been absolute bangers. We had Austria a couple of weeks ago, and that was an ending that I don't think any of us would have scripted or thought of or even put in the back pages of our mind. Very exciting as we saw some rain coming down late on. But championship-wise, was very interesting. Had some post-race penalties that have just shaken things up ever so slightly. And for this week, we have a very interesting lineup and a few big names that are going to be joining us, which I am very excited for, as is the second member of Tom Squared, infiltrating every single place you go. TK, how are you doing?
I'm doing very well. It's so good to be back as well. I missed off a couple of weeks ago, unfortunately due to work commitments. And then we had a week break, which was the most inconveniently timed break to miss a show and then come back. But no, it's always good to be back. Some good racing, as you said, and very much so, some exciting lineups heading into today.
Definitely. We'll hold our horses on that for the moment. We'll go to the track firstly, though, and we'll have a look at the calendar. First 4 races we've had were all very exciting, very different circuits. Started off in Australia, then it was China, Silverstone and Austria. Now for our second batch of 4 races, we begin in Suzuka, which is maybe going to be something more akin to what we saw right at the start of the season in Australia in particular. Then we go to Spa in a week's time before Bahrain and the Circuit of the Americas. And then that final 4 race run, which is going to be hugely exciting, full of absolute chaos, starting with Saudi Arabia. We say it every week, we're like a broken record. I'm very much looking forward to that one. Then we go Mexico, Brazil and Abu Dhabi. Yes, we are, to finish off the first season. An exciting one. I think we're just starting to see what kind of circuits work and what kind of things we can expect from the different types of circuits.
I think you're absolutely right. And it's one thing that we've really started to notice over the start of the season so far, that as these new regulations have come in and as the drivers are adapting to the changes, most notably with the battery and how the harvesting works, we're starting to see the times get quicker. We're starting to see them be able to race closer together, more competently together. And that is actually going to benefit more as we get to the likes of, your Jeddahs, your Abu Dhabi later on in the season. But it's good to see that kind of progression that we're all making.
Absolutely. And that acclimatization that we're still having to get through, especially when we have updates made to the game that change things ever so slightly. We have to wait and see what comes in the next couple of weeks, of course. Welcome into everybody joining us on this wonderful Tuesday afternoon or evening or morning, wherever you are. It's been a great day in the UK because I got rained on. And that's the first time that's happened in about 3 months. I was absolutely soaking wet. So that was very, very interesting for the first time. Slightly miscalculated how heavy it was. But we will cut the flim flam. And we are going to have a look at this driver lineup because it is absolutely stacked. Most notable name that jumps off the page, if you head over to the Alpine squadron, that is Otis Lawrence, who you might have seen in the chat a couple of times in the past few races, the F1 Sim Racing champion, joining us this evening, looking to put some manners on some of the normal participation or the participants that we've had so far this season. Sergio Sabrina returns as well, winner of round number 1 in Australia. Hasn't been back since, so that'll be fascinating. We've got a lot of the usual names right at the sharp in Joris Kroes, championship leader Angelo Dortenzio, who's been so consistent so far despite having a bit of a difficult race a couple of weeks ago in Austria. But you just look down that line, you've got Alvaro Carreton in there, Shanaka Clay joining us in the Audi this week as well. I mean, if it wasn't a really competitive grid beforehand, we've just taken it up a notch, I think it's fair to say.
Absolutely right. The grid has been stacked with some amazing talent. It was quite interesting. I only heard Shanaka was racing because his sister told me over the course of today and informed me the fact that we're going to see him drive for the first time in the Ventauri Pro Series. So very much looking forward to that one as well. So, there is a really good lineup. If Otis Lawrence doesn't put all these drivers in the mud, there is questions to be raised, though.
Try and put some manners on some of the perennial contenders for this throne. I think we should have a look at the championship picture just to see how things have shaped up after the 4 rounds we've had so far. It is a 13-point margin at the summit for Joris Kroes, who did pick up the victory a couple of weeks ago in Austria, courtesy of a post-race 10-second penalty for Liam Stevens, which dropped the Green Machine down into position number 3, not just in the championship, but on the road as well, with Angelo Dortenzio, who's probably been outright the fastest driver so far this season, sat there in second place. Tycho Hardy's been so consistent so far, level pegging with Stevens on 69. Then we've got Gal, Klaffenbort, Beisner, Luca Rapassa. Sergio Sabrino, that 30 points that he picked up in round number 1, still keeping him nestled inside the top 10, with Kokeni just behind, and then Jensen Rosen in 11th. But if we look at the championship, the way it's shaping up, do we think it's going to be that group of 4 right at the sharp end that are going to just continue to detach themselves 22 points clear of Gal? Or with some of the new names that are coming in, might we start to see things just shake up a little bit to make it a bit harder for some of those guys at the top?
I think it's something that you really have to look at the bigger picture at this moment in time and try and understand how the drivers have developed over the first 4 rounds. Obviously, we're only a third of the way through the season calendar at the moment. There's a lot of races to come, and actually a lot of them where DNFs are highly plausible and possible. And of course, with the additions, the new names that we're seeing coming in, all the more likely we are going to see those crucial points at the top end of the table being stolen away. So it is all to play for, and I think echoing what you've said with the likes of Crozen and Hortenzio being the fastest driver outright in pace, when we look at the consistency of the first 4 races, that is absolutely where we're getting the main information from.
Definitely. And Liam Stevens was a driver that was coming on very well, was really riding the crest of a wave. Not here this week, so that'll be another driver that won't be challenging right at the sharp end. But yes, championship picture shaping up really nicely as we do go past that first third of the inaugural season of this championship. Welcoming everybody that's still joining us. If you are new, which some of you might be, the way this is going to work is we have got a 100% qualifying session. There it is, Q1, Q2 and Q3 to sink your teeth into. We are in the multiplayer cars for qualifying just because the margins are so tight. We don't want any undue advantages being handed out to certain drivers out there with the car that they choose. We will be back in the F126 cars for the race, and that will be a 50% race. That will be following our full qualifying session. It's provided qualifying some really interesting action, hasn't it? The gaps, especially when you're on the bubble of trying to make it through to the next part of qualifying, as we would expect, have been incredibly tight. Sometimes decided by milliseconds, sometimes decided by who set the time first.
Absolutely, and it really has been that close over the course of the session. We mentioned earlier about the new drivers stepping in, obviously the likes of Otis Lawrence and obviously Shanika Clay as well. We've got a very special VIP guest that stepped into qualifying here, Tom. If you look down in 16th place, Ton Sahur has come to join us.
They have. That is Tony Heitler, who is jumping back in for the first time in a few weeks. I don't think we've seen Tony since round number 2 at China, I believe. So jumping back in to the hot seat and obviously forgetting to change the Steam name there. So that is a nice funny one for us. But here's Lucas Bison around the final corner, another driver that's been ever so consistent on those intermediate tyres with a 32 flat. Most of the drivers still in the pit lane. Obviously, you want to try and get through this qualifying session using as few soft tyres as possible. So you've got 2 brand new sets in Q3, so you can go full send as Alves with a 32.3, a third of a second down on Bison. We will have a lobby reset as well between qualifying and the race, so bear that in mind as well. So the soft tyres, even though not too many people will be using them in the race, we don't expect, they will get them back if they so desire.
Absolutely, and that is the benefit that our drivers are allowed, and hopefully, with all fingers crossed, we will see the lovely livery sponsors and all the decals available back in when we get to race day. The proper liveries taking shape now that obviously the qualifying element will be out the way. Just a reminder as well, Peso, that is P9 on your screens. That's Jan Halliday making his way through the final corner, coming across the line and going third fastest, the slowest of any driver. There is currently set time on the intermediate compound. Sergio Sobrino just making their way through Spoon and benefiting from the new addition, the second straight line mode added to replace the old DRS system, even though if you want to get technical with it, straight line mode is just a direct reduction system.
It is indeed. The old active aero popping in there as we watch Sabrina making their return in the racing ball into the Cassia triangle. Very wide through the first part, manages to veer it off and get it rotated nicely through the second part, but we do return to the pit lane and we don't fancy completing that one on the intermediate tyres. So 3 lap times set in the opening 5.5 minutes, let's call it, of qualifying 1. Remember, top 16 are the drivers that head through now that we've got 22 on the grid for the first time in quite a while, as we still wait to see what the times. Pole time is going to be really difficult to sort of conjure up a prediction of where we're going to be sitting, isn't it? Because we haven't got any reference points really at all so far.
Yeah, it's going to be a really tough one. I think we'll figure it out more as we head through Q2 and into the rest of the session. Of course, as we start to see those kind of soft tyre runs start to take effect, we probably won't see drivers out at least for the next maybe 2 or 3 minutes until we're under proper runs. But obviously I mentioned earlier, the only reason I knew that Shanika was racing, obviously paid attention closer to the time that we got in and got racing and got the stream set up, but it was actually because his mum was asking for the stream. So Emma asked me for that. So hi Shanika's mum.
Hello. Hoping that this goes well for Shanika Clay, who hasn't emerged yet from the pit lane in the Audi for this evening's action, alongside Tony Heitler, who of course is called Ton Sahur in P16 at the moment. Still yet to see an appearance from Burnt Mylander as well. It's a regular occurrence that we see Burnt just trundling out of the pit lane in the safety car, because we have got safety car turned off, of course. So he is banned from competing in the race. So he tries to get his laps in during qualifying. We'll have a bit of a down point as we wait for the drivers to venture out for the first time on the soft tyres, which means we can have a bit of a chat about what we can expect from this circuit, TK, because I alluded to it earlier. Might be a little bit more akin to what we saw in Australia with the battery management and the games that could potentially be played and the differing ERS management and deployment strategies drivers are going to be going for.
Yeah, I think we're going to see some really interesting strategies, most notably over through qualifying. Obviously, as they run through hairpin and up towards Spoon Curve, they're going to have to be really mindful to try and save as much battery as they can, because it's an incredibly long run down towards the Casio Triangle, and that is most notably the longest straight on this circuit, if you want to call it that. Obviously, the little kink at 130R, but it is pretty much flat out all the way down to that heavy braking zone. It's almost like as you're running through Blanchimont at Spa, it's that sort of equivalent, a little bit of a corner, but you are still flat out and burning the utmost amount of battery. But I think we'll find out as we go in towards qualifying who's going to start to set the purple sectors, who will set the purple lap overall, and will it be the driver that nails sectors, or will it be the driver that just benefits from that consistency over the course of a lap?
Sergio's heard Australia. That's why he's back this week, everybody, because he thinks there's another chance at winning the race. And speaking of Sergio Sabrino, we've almost seen the way that the race strategies work flip, because the reason why Sergio won that season opener was he got an undercut in. I think it was 2 or 3 laps that he got over the group behind, got about 3 or 4 seconds ahead of that group, who then spent the next 10 laps fighting incredibly hard, and then they ran out of laps basically at the end of the session to try and hunt him back down. It was Luca Rapace and Tycho Hardy that were leading that secondary charge. But what we've seen in the last couple of weeks is Liam Stevens going for the overcut strategy, going long on his first stint, and then having some really searing pace in the second half of the race, and being quite comfortable cutting his way through the field and doing it very quickly and efficiently as well. So we've seen that dynamic switch or shift from the undercut being the more powerful strategy, let's say, to the overcut actually being the strategy that we've seen the last couple of winners employ, and employ very successfully.
You're absolutely right. And, you know, I think it's something that is very track dependent. We'll see it switch maybe from one to another circuit. But drivers that have that favourite strategy, I don't want to call it that too much, but obviously there are drivers that favour the undercut. There's drivers that favour that overcut and like working their way through the field in the second half of the race. Quite notably, obviously, Otmir loves to do the harder tyre to start off with and basically benefit from the lighter car, the better compound of tyres at race end. And, you know, sometimes it's a bit of a coin flip whether it works, how much traffic he gets caught up in, but quite notably, that's how he loves to run the races, especially when we reach the top tiers of league racing.
Absolutely. There's so many different ways that people try and approach it, and you need to try and get the most out of yourself as well, because if you're a driver that maybe uses those tyres a little bit more, you left yourself a little bit exposed if you are going for that overcut strategy, because you're running on pretty much the rims of those tyres if you are working them incredibly hard. And tyres are something that we probably will talk about in this qualifying session as well, because the way that this circuit works, we know what Suzuka's like, don't we? You put a lot of load into those front tyres in particular through that first sector, carrying almighty speed, although not quite as much as we had in the ground effect era, as there will be some recharging going on, I am sure. But it's Jenson Rosen this time in what you can only assume is the McLaren, with that papaya, or not quite papaya, more of a sort of fresh orange there. There's the colour of an orange frutella, if you will. Powering through turns 1 and turns 2. Has been in the Williams for the majority of this season, but with some of the drivers that have been coming in, we've had a couple of shift around, and a couple of swaps around to get those guys into their designated esport teams.
Absolutely. And I'm right, you're saying it's a little bit of a light orange, isn't it? Frutella is probably the best example I've heard of describing that exact colour. Throwing it in to the first exit and now the second. Just cautious, could attack the curb, maybe a slight bit more, but save that for the later runs in Q2 and Q3 up towards the hairpin and a little bit of lift and coast. And this is where we'll really start to see the drivers recharging as much battery as they possibly can, because they've got to prepare for it. The run through this corner and up towards Spoon again, they've almost got to try and balance that. How much can they push here versus then push on the back straight?
Now, we don't have the number there, obviously not trying to give too much away, but Rosen deploying a decent amount coming out of the hairpin, then keeping it pretty clean, actually, through Spoon Curve, and doing a nice job there. And this is where we'll be back on the money, back on the button, try and see what you've got left in the tank. As we head down towards 130R, not quite as fearsome as it once was about 20 or so years ago. Absolutely flat, although you might be going for a bit of lift and coasting depending on what your strategies are. Throw it into the Casio Triangle. You can ride those curves and gain so much time if you get the line right. And up to the line we go with Rosen. The benchmark for everybody to chase is a 27.5 on those soft tyres.
Absolutely, and the target time is going to considerably start to work its way down. Ton Sahur, that is going to be Tony Hightower going second fastest, 125.6 flat. But some just 84 thousandths of a second off the back, and here comes Otis Lawrence, the young Welshman, proving and standing at the top by 73 thousandths of a second, just above Tamas Gala as well. So the F1 Esports Sim Racing World Champion, whatever you want to call it, is currently top in Q1, and I have a feeling that young man has still got a lot in his locker left.
Absolutely, should be definitely safe with that one as well. Tamas Gal doing a good job to chase him down, though. Just, what's that, 700ths of a second separating Lawrence and Gal. 27.3 is a pretty darn competitive lap time. Here is Joris Krozen powering up towards 130R as Luera goes third fastest, another driver on the 27.3. A lot of drives in that mid-27 range. Alves to P4, 27.5. Lots of them coming in. Hardy, Kenny Beisner also in the also members of the 27.5 club. Here comes Krozen to the line, dips just below it into P4 and a 27.4.
It was interesting just watching on board there from Krozen, out of battery practically all the way through 130R, and it's something that we've said so often is how much battery are you saving for that kind of third and final push sector. Because he went purple in the first, he is still purple in the first, a 31.892, and it was personal best in the second and the third. Lost a good couple of tenths in both the second and third compared to the likes of Otis Lawrence and Tamas Gal, who sit first and second respectively on our grid. The only driver yet to set a lap time, Larry Tulke, making his way up towards the spoon curve. The double double left-hander, which is going to cause trouble, I think, for a few of our drivers as we get into race day. It was 27 laps around the Suzuka circuit for the Grand Prix today, and it's not a place you traditionally want to try and send a car too wide.
No, you can get a little bit greedy with it. Just run out slightly wide over that curve and it can drag you in. There's not a lot of grip out there either, as we saw someone getting out of the way. Thought they dropped it coming out of spoon curve, which is very easily done. Here is Tulke through the Casio triangle, not a push lap, and should be returning to the pits. And does, invalidating on their first attempt. Conrad Bowen without a representative time on the board either. Set pole position a week ago, or 2 weeks ago, I should say, in Austria. There is the retirement from Otis Lawrence that we were very much expecting. I would be surprised if Gal and Luero don't follow suit. But Conrad Bowen picked up a brilliant pole position, and then the race really unraveled after a mistake just before the pit stop phase. Dropped him down into the mid-pack of the top 10. And then it just spiraled from there onwards. But Bowen's got some really strong pace. We saw that a couple of weeks ago. We're hoping to try and get back on the horse and go again. Currently needs to find a decent chunk of time in P20. Krozen retires in P5. Gal retires in P2. That's probably the time that people should be safe, as Pedrino goes sixth fastest as well on that 27.4. Probably the mark you're looking at.
Yeah, I was actually going to say before Yaros retired, we're looking probably around the 127.4/5s, call it that. Press mark anywhere around Nelson Alves would be assumably safe. That is close, all the way down to Gabor Tronstos as well, down in 20th. Only about 3 tenths or so between themselves and Pedreno. But it is going to be Stephen Varso back out on a lap and quite possibly running one of the best imitation liveries that I think I've seen. That is a man that has put good time into designing his F1 World Car.
And we can absolutely respect that, can't we? He's done a good job of making that Alpine look as Alpine-like as possible. And he is a little bit out of sync, at least half a lap ahead of everybody else he's going to be. Somebody emerging from the pit lane now in a white car. We can't quite work out who that will be, but it will be revealed to us on the timing tower. Eventually, it is Conrad Bohm venturing out second on the road, followed by Mercedes. Nelson Alves. I didn't take any notice of it, but that is a good Mercedes livery. I think Gabor Chonstos has got something fairly similar as well. Good job there. You've even got the right shade of teal for the Petronas on the side. Well done.
Even the compass logo in the roughly right place and right side. I'm impressed with some of the artwork that some of these drivers have been displaying over the course of today. And it doesn't take much to add a bit of creativity to the car, but fair play to those who do it. It makes our lives, I think, tenfold easier sometimes, doesn't it?
Definitely makes it much easier to try and identify. As here comes Varza then out of the Casio triangle. Currently the driver on the bubble. 2 minutes left to go in qualifying. 27.649. Realistically is going to have to find probably 2 tenths to be comfortable with the top 6 all retiring in the pit lane. Nelson Alves, interesting to see that they've gone back out in that low 27.5. Varzo, car a little bit wobbly over the curves through the sweeps and the S's of the first sector and up towards Dunlop. Are we finding time? Need to find a decent whack of it as we head up towards the split before the 2 Degnas. 2 incredible corners, but you've got to be careful of those curbs. And we are up by 0.03 of a second, leaving a little bit of margin to the outside curb. He throws it into the second part of the Degnas.
Does so well. A little bit of lift and coast in towards hairpin and throws the car in. Gets it nicely, just clipping the apex on the inside and the run down towards Spoon Curve. A lot of cars in front of him, and you can see a lot of traffic actually that will start to build up on that double left-hander. He's got to do his best here to try and slip on through. There's a car in front going incredibly slowly, not watching all this ghosting. He's got lucky there, but we're certainly backing off. Yeah, there we go. Visual distraction on Steven Varso, and understandably, I think we'll be a little bit annoyed in that cockpit.
Not good news, especially when you are the driver that desperately needs to find a little bit of time with those improvements. Looked like a really good run, in particular through the hairpin for Varso. This is a double-edged sword, isn't it? When you go out slightly early, yes, you get the track space, but you might catch the traffic, and then it might swing back to you because there is an opportunity, if you've got the fuel and you've got the tyres and you can recharge the battery, to go again. Here comes Clay through turns 1 and turns 2. Bottom 5 at the moment. Claffenborg, Quintino, Angelo D'Ortenzio down there in 19th on a 27.7. Chonstos, Bohm and Tulki, the bottom 2, yet to get representative times on the board. A lot of drivers that are going to be feeling under the cosh here, heading into the final lap times of the session, as Clay heads up towards the 2 Degners, 12th fastest at the moment, but finding nearly 3/4 of a tenth.
Good run so far in towards the second Degner as well. Cool, calm and collected for Clay. Up towards hairpin, the left-hander. Want to just try and throw the car in, extending the track limits to the right-hand side, and does so to open up that corner as the best they can. Checkered flag flies then here in qualifying, and it becomes a guessing game of which white car is coming across that line first.
I think it was Conrad Bohm who was out on the circuit first. Yes, here is Bohm to the line, only 20th fastest. So the pole sitter from Austria a couple of weeks ago, Bays Adieu in qualifying 1. Here is Sergio Sobrino, victor in round number 1, 15th fastest at the moment, stays 15th fastest, very much at risk.
Absolutely. Next across the line will probably be 10th place. It was 7th place. Nelson Naves improves by 28 thousandths. Tamas Kokene as well, making their way up towards the line. Shanaka Clay, my apologies, up towards final corner, towards the line as well. Crosses it and does go up to 5th fastest. Who's that on the line? Who's had a crash?
I'm not sure. D'Ortenzio's gone 3rd fastest, though, so escaped the problem. Tulki, Sobrino, Quintino and Bohm definitely out of it. We wait to see what Varso can do. We wait for Claffenborg as well, as Kokeni goes 5th. Hardy goes 6th, ahead of Hadlar, who goes 7th. We're waiting for Varso, who is finding time. 21st at the moment. To the line goes Varso, does get the lap in, so the impeding in the end doesn't come back to bite him. Halliday did find that improvement for Aston Martin as well. Jensen Rosen through in 15th. Didn't quite catch who the 6th to make way are. As we head over to the timing charts, Otis Lawrence still fastest from Gal and D'Ortenzio. But the 6th to make way will be Tony Heitler, missing it by 400. Gabor Chonstos, Sergio Sobrino, winner of round number 1. Larry Tulki, Gabriel Quintino and Conrad Bohm missing out.
I guess that gives Tony Hightower about half an hour or so to go change his Steam name. Not that he'll remember. I'm going to make an early prediction that we will see that come race day. But tough for all those drivers to head out. It's a tough qualifying here at Suzuka, and one that I think our drivers as well are going to, I wouldn't say struggle with, but as we get into Q2 and Q3, it's only going to get more competitive from here.
Definitely. Those gaps are going to converge, you would imagine, as the drivers continue just to find that comfort zone and just start to ramp it up lap by lap. Should be the used tyre run at the start of the session. Still yet to see, we need to remember, still yet to see Bernd Mailander in this qualifying session as well. So let's just wait and see whether he does make an appearance. And I think, hearing from the chat, that it was Julian Klaffenborg who bolted Steven Varso on their first attempt on the final runs, but managed to get that second lap time in and get through comfortably in the end. P6, I think it was, for Varso. So matters not at the end of the day.
Yeah, I saw that in the little driver's chat. Steven Varso not happy with what did in fact happen there, but we're down to 16 then. We've lost the initial 6. And now another 6 will be leaving this qualifying session. Let us know in the chat. And I know we've had the first runs, but I know we've only had Q1. Let us know in the live chat, down in the YouTube comment section, who you think is getting pole position and why is it Otis Lawrence?
You'll be a brave person to bet against the F1 sim racing world champion heading into Q2 and Q3. Strange things have happened before, though. But with the pace that you saw, I mean, that looked like a very comfortable 27.2 to be fastest by just under half a tenth, I think it was, ahead of Tamas Gal. Tycho Hardy first out onto the road. Big bunch of drivers heading through the S's of the first sector, down to 16, of course. I think the cutoff time, I didn't quite catch it. I'm going to go back and look. I think it was that 27.5 was the time that you needed to get inside. 27.558. So yes, 27.6 and upwards were all knocked out.
I say 27 threes for Q3. That's going to be my prediction.
Interesting. That is an interesting one. I think who was inside that mark for 27.3 in Q1? It was the top 5 of Lawrence Gal, Dortenzio Luera, and Kekeni, all with a 27.3. So we'll just bank that one, and we'll see if that does extend out to the other drivers.
I think we've had a fair share of early predictions, but I think that's sort of the time we're going to have to find over the course of this Q2 session. Of course, 13 minutes and 13 seconds to be exact as it stands before that checkered flag does start to wave. It will be Tycho Hardy that leads us through the final corner and on to first timed lap of the session.
So should be the used tyre runs, which may have an underlying importance, but we're not expecting these used tyre runs to be quick enough to sneak you through into the final part of qualifying. So just about getting yourself in a good position where you don't find yourself under the cosh. If you're outside of that top 10, I should say, in the bottom 6, heading on to those final runs of the qualifying session, may just find yourself treading on eggshells a little bit, just trying to get the lap time in as Hardy sweeps it through the S's and up towards Dunlop Curve of turn 7, heading down, back down the hill towards the 2 Degners, throw it in. You've got to have total commitment, don't you, when you chuck the car into Degner 1, as it's a 31.9, but looked a little bit squirmy at the back of the car.
He does not have a white race suit at the moment in time, because there was definitely a little bit of a squiggle, a little bit of a wiggle through the opening Degner corner. You just saw as he wanted to throw that car in. The car did not respond in the manner in which he would have expected.
And back of the car, and that will just put his eyes on stalks a little bit. Maybe wake him up for the second half of this qualifying lap with the back of the car not playing ball. Takes a little bit too much curve through the first part of Spoon Curve and just pushes it ever so slightly wide. So not the cleanest of lap times so far from Tycho Hardy, but just trying to get this banker time on the ball with a 110.4 through the first couple of sectors. 130R and then the Casio triangle of 16, 17 and then turn 18, which is of course flat as you like, to complete the first lap time of the session, but won't get a time on the ball because he chops off the inside, the second part of the Casio triangle, and throws the lap time into the bin. It'll be Luera to the line on a 27.500 to take the benchmark, immediately beaten by a 10th by Alvaro Carreton.
Carreton's a dark horse at the moment. Of course, went a little bit under the radar in the opening qualifying session. Of course, in his own right, is a fantastic Sim Racing World Championship driver. Pedreno across the line as well, second fastest overall. And a few drivers as well coming across the line just to join them on that timing board. Shanika Clay, one of them, 6th fastest as it stands, 27.696. Of course, more runs to be expected from, well, let's have a look at this, the 7 drivers that have yet to even exit out of pit road. Or if they have chosen to do so already, they didn't want to go and get a representative time on the board. Hardy, of course, invalidating their opening run, as was, I believe, I was going to say Rosen, but actually he has managed to get one right at the final seconds and goes 6th fastest.
Rosen, somebody that was definitely out on the circuit as well, bailing and jumping into the pit. So whether that was because the lap was just absolutely terrible, wasn't enjoying the used tyres, or just not feeling it. Or, of course, an invalidation like we saw befalling Tycho Hardy through the Casio triangle. Well, not usually a place where we see the invalidations, is it? Normally through the Degners, if you just carry a little bit too much speed, potentially if you're lazy as well on the exit of Spoon Curve. But this kind of circuit isn't necessarily the place that we would associate with lots of track limit warnings and eventual penalties.
It's interesting, I believe, and don't quote me on this, the first 2 runs in both Q1 and Q2, I think are both invalidated at the Casio triangle, or at least in the 3rd and final sector. I think drivers are just trying to extend those limits a little bit in their opening laps to give themselves a good delta to then benefit from later in the runs.
Because it's very inviting, that chicane, isn't it? Because the curbs they're not quite flat, but if you get it at the right angle, you can take a massive chunk of time out of it because you can really chop it off and get a really nice run and then set it up out through 18 as well. But obviously, if you hit it wrong, either you are going to bottom out over those curbs, or you're going to just take a little bit too much of that curb, and then you invalidate, and then the lap time's ruined right at the last gas. So it is a finite balancing act. You've got to be very precise as you weave it through the Casio triangle. Speaking of weaving, that's exactly what you've got to do through the first sector. Just try and hook it up and feel that flow through those S's.
Yeah, we see Stephen Varso just making their way through a second Degner curve and just trying to figure out how the car handles. Of course, their first proper run of this session. Angelo Dortenzio joining them out on pit road. Out on the live circuit, as is Lucas Beisner as well, just making their way out according to the track map. There we go. So 2 of the 3 red cars available on this session are out on the circuit. Everybody else starting to peel out of the pits to join them as well. But Tom, I've been thinking of dangerous, I know. But you know what I'd love inside of, maybe we'll hope for F1 27, I appreciate it's a long way away, to be able to use a helicopter shot over the S's, because I think it'd be fantastic to see. We never get that camera angle here.
We get some very good helicopter shots on this game. You have to give it credit sometimes. Some of the spectator cameras are absolutely stunning. Some of them are the over-the-shoulder cameras when they're the driver in front and you can't see what's going on. And that's the other side of the coin, if you will. But yeah, if we could get some more of those helicopter shots, I would be a very big fan of it. As Steven Varzo rounding the final corner. There's Burnt!
Yay!
There is Burnt Mylander. First time we've seen him today as he charges down towards turn number 1. And if Varzo wasn't put off in Q1 by that car that was getting in the way through Spoon, now he's got to fly through the safety car, which I don't think has dampened his spirits too much as he barrels through the rest of the S's.
You know what? I was going to say in Q1 that we rarely see him in the first qualifying session. It's always Q2 that he seems to make his appearance. Well, right on schedule, the safety car out on circuit, which is still the most hilarious bug that I think we have inside of this game. That it is so consistent at this point that I think we're going to see it cross-platform at this point.
Happens every time.
I
think it happens in short qualifying as well, as that is Varzo bailing, dipping a wheel, the front left into the gravel through Degner 2. Maybe just Tony Hawking it over the curb and getting out of that one. So that could be a set of tyres throwing down the Swanee at this rate if he can't find improvement on his second attempt, if he even goes for a second attempt before jumping back into the pit. But here is Angelo D'Ortenzio, who was sweating a little bit in the first qualifying session, had to get a good lap time for his second attempt, got up to P3 in the end with a very competitive late run as he's trying to get this hooked up as best as possible through the S's, up through Dunlop curve. Don't want to use that curb on the inside because it will kill you, especially with some of these curves that follow through into Degner 1 and Degner 2. 32 flat isn't particularly quick through the first sector, but obviously there is the caveat of people going for different ERS strategies. I think just touching the grass as well on the run into the hairpin, maybe pushing him slightly wider the apex, slightly wider than he would have been hoping for at least.
Yeah, I think you're right. And one thing we'll try and keep an eye out as they make their way down towards Spoon. How aggressive are they on those inside curves? Nice little touch on the first, runs out wide, and again, just missing out on that apex on the inside. But I don't think it's going to impact them too much. Burning down the battery all the way to 130R. But if my assumptions are correct, they'll be out of battery by about now.
Oh, very close. We could just still see that yellow bar as we go through 130R, keeping it all the way over to the left-hand side. Burnt Mylander in the distance negotiates the Casio triangle. D'Ortenzio follows suit. Bit of a wobble, gets on the grass as well, coming out of the second part of the chicane. To the line we go with D'Ortenzio, does go fastest. 27.299 with a slightly scruffy final couple of corners. Definitely some time still in the back pocket of the Ferrari.
Great lap time. Luero as well, now faster, 27.223, so finding just 76 thousandths of a second, quarter of a tenth for themselves. Otis Lawrence in towards the Casio triangle, attacking that curb like it owes him money at the moment. In towards the final, and round the corner, Gal goes fastest, 27.168. Can Lawrence go faster? No, not on this occasion. 27.265 for the F1 Sim Racing World Champion as it stands. Of course, it's not all about being fastest in this session, Tom. It's about being, well, able to qualify, essentially, for qualifying 3.
And I think that's exactly the same lap time that Otis Lawrence set in Q1. I'm just going to try and fact check this one to the millisecond for Otis Lawrence, as Jan Halliday goes 7th fastest on a 27.3. Top 10 now covered by, well, top 10 now covered by just over 2 tenths, with Ruben Pedrino into P2. Tamas Gal's still fastest. Oh, he's exactly the same time. But Pedrino's got the purple lap time. Work that one out as Caraton goes 4th fastest, just ahead of Lawrence. 2 milliseconds slower than Luero, pushes Klaffenborg and Varzo out of the top 10. I'm still trying to work out if it was the same lap time that Otis Lawrence... Everything's just kicking off, everybody.
It is. Interesting that it's awarded technically fastest lap to Pedrino, but kept Tamas Gal at the top, as it should do. So maybe we've discovered a new bug here today, ladies and gentlemen, for the first time in probably a long time. The driver that is on top spot, of course not provisional pole position as it stands, has been matched by the driver in P2, Joris Krozen as well, you mentioned earlier, invalidating their opening run as the gauntlet of Burnt Mylander just appears behind them on the run through towards 130R. That was something like out of a horror movie where the killer has just appeared out of a doorway on board with Joris Krozen and making his way through the Casio triangle, almost certainly into pit road here, because they've got to be careful with time. They want to get this final run rough and ready.
Yeah, 4 minutes to go. I can confirm that Otis Lawrence lap time is exactly the same that he set in Q1. So if you're talking about consistency, well, there is your man, your F1 Sim Racing world champion. I'm interested. I've never seen this thing at the top between Gal and Pedrino. I'm wondering if maybe that's the game's way of saying that Pedrino was actually slightly faster, but because we're rounding to 3 decimal places and Gal said it first, Gal's at the top of the timing charts, even though Pedrino's technically got the fastest lap.
I think you're absolutely right in what you're saying, because from what I remember, I think the game data can actually provide to 4 decimal places. I'm happy to be corrected by engineers who probably know a lot more than this. But I know in F1, certainly, it does time to 4 decimal places, and only shows us 3 for the timing, because that was the format that was set many, many years ago. So I think you're right. Pedrino probably, less than 1/10 of a thousandth quicker than Tamas Gal on this occasion. Of course, as we register to just 3 decimal places here inside of Formula 1, it was Tamas Gal that, well, still holds on to that top spot, albeit not provisional pole position.
Absolutely, and it means our bottom 6. Joris Krozen yet to get a time on the board. Couple of attempts, couple of invalidations. Nelson Alves, 27.7, hasn't got a run on the new tyres and is heading out now. So he'll be the first to tackle this qualifying lap for the final time in Q2. Lucas Beisner has been really consistent so far this season. Same with Tycho Hardy, who was knocked out in Q1 a couple of weeks ago in Austria. Will be looking not to find himself out of position on the grid again. Steven Varzo and Julian Klaffenborg both in the 27.3s, but at the moment 11th and 12th, just behind the Aston Martin of Jan Halliday, who is currently on the bubble, 8 milliseconds clear of Klaffenborg, with Clay, Kokeni, Rosen all looking over their shoulder. And Tamas Gal is back out on the circuit, so there is presumably going to be nobody that's going for that early retirement to stick it in the pit lane and stay in the pit lane.
I don't think anybody's necessarily brave enough at the moment. 2.2 tenths from safety to, well, an early shower here in qualifying. And I just want to draw attention back to the start of this qualifying session. My early prediction for 27, I think it was 27.3 being that cut-off point, looks increasingly more likely at this moment in time.
Can we go down to 3 decimal places? Can we do that prediction again? I think we did it 3 weeks ago when you were last here. So what's the exact cut-off going to be, TK?
I'm going to go 27.317.
Interesting. 0.298 will be enough, so we're lowering it down just below the time of Angelo D'Ortenzio. Interesting one there from Tator. So we're going to continue. I'll put my neck on the line. I'm going to say it's going to be. I'm thinking it might be in the 2s as well. I'm going to go 27.284, and I hope people can remember this because I definitely won't.
Can someone put it in chat? Because if I go to type in chat, it will pause the game. We love EA. And that is what will happen. Nelson Alves through the Casio triangle. Then the first of the final runs in qualifying 2. And it will be Alves that kicks us off in, I'm assuming, the Mercedes replica livery.
Well, we can verify that as we head over. It's a Williams replica livery, I believe, for Nelson Alves. Is it navy blue? Not really. That's black and silver. So he's not quite got the colours right there as Nelson Alves, but needs to find a lap here. 27.7, needs realistically half a second to get himself into the top 10 shootout. Car sliding a little bit through the S's of 4 and 5, up through Dunlop, keeping his foot pinned to the floor of that, what looks like a Cadillac, but I can confirm it is a Williams car. Do we find time? We find 700ths of a second through Sector 1, carrying a lot of speed through Degner 1, trying to carry that speed again through Degner 2 as we head up the hill into the hairpin.
Absolutely critical part of the lap. A little bit of a slide as he threw the car in this time around. And again, using all of the track available to them for the run down towards Spoon Curve. Can Alves try and find time in the second sector? Checkered flag flies. So Alves will be the first and the opening driver to set their final lap time of the afternoon here in qualifying 2. Through Spoon nicely. But Mylander's still in front of him. And up towards that sector split. We'll see if Alves is able to try and hold on to that little advantage that they had. 0.3 of a second found. That puts them in the realms of a 27.4 as it stands. He needs a good final sector, though.
He's a decent chunk in this final sector as well. Maybe another 10th and a half. Riding the curbs through the Casio triangle. foot pinned to the floor once again. Nothing more you can do. Alves to the line. Do we get out? Yes, we do. Brilliant final sector. Goes third fastest. That will just alert a few drivers as Otis Lawrence goes third fastest. Dispossess him of that. Shanika Clay is 10th fastest, though. Massively under pressure and now gone as Tycho Hardy 7th on a 27.2. Kenny fastest now on a 27.1. The times are flip-flopping here. Drivers are definitely going to have to get these lap times in. Luero 5th fastest. Gal goes faster again, 27 flat. Here's Rosen, who doesn't improve, stays 10th fastest. Dortenzio on the bubble as well. As here is the Ferrari man, up by 600 through Sector 1 and Sector 2. Still waiting for Crozen. Still waiting for Halliday as well. Dortenzio needs to find this lap time though. Halliday goes 8th fastest, pushes Varzo out. D'Angelo Dortenzio now needs this time and gets it. Goes 4th fastest, pushes Tycho Hardy out right at the last gasp. And that was a qualifying session I didn't exactly expect, as Pedrino right at the end with a buzzer beater to go fastest.
Absolutely. Great lap from themselves at the end and beat off Tamas Gal by just 0.003 of a second. But of course, that all-important cut-off here, Tom, 1:27.277. So you were, I mean, closer than both I and chat as well. A lot of them saying around that 0.3 mark. But it was Tycho Hardy, Steven Varso, Joris Kroes, Jensen Rosen, Shanika Clay, and Lucas Beisner, the 6 drivers that we have lost heading into the third and final qualifying session. But the 10 that remain, Pedrino, Gal, Kukeni, Caraton, Dortenzio, Lawrence, Lorero, Alves, I can't remember who, Pesos and Klaffenbach.
Yeah.
Halliday, that's it.
Yeah, that was a Q2 session that I didn't expect. That was all go, wasn't it, with those final runs? Drivers finding a lot of time. If you didn't find that improvement, you're basically stuffed right at the end. Tycho Hardy getting nipped in the bud there with that late lap time from Angelo Dortenzio. Surprised that Joris Krozen didn't make it through. The shame with Shanika Clay as well. So some big names missing out, and that's what you get when it is so competitive. You've got to be on the ball. You've got to nail that lap time, or at least get to 98% realistically. And if you fall short of that, you're going to be sweating.
You really are. And of course, big names stepping out of this qualifying session. Looking back to Q1, I was shocked that Haitala went out so early. I was shocked that Clay went out early in Q2. And there's some good names that have made it through. I think that's understated when we get to this level of competition, that all of the names are at the elite level of the sport. So it is no surprise that many of them, if not all of them, have made it through to the third and final qualifying session. Of course, a lot of it being so track dependent. But now we are down to the final 10 and looking to see who is going to take provisional pole position here. Suzuka, and of course leading in to that 27-lap Grand Prix that will be coming your way in roughly about 15-20 minutes.
Fascinating, isn't it? Because it's now very difficult to put your finger on who the favourite's going to be. Ruben Pedrino, Tamas Gal, 27 flat. They're about half a tenth quicker than anybody else in Q2. Do you still fancy the F1 sim racing champion Otis Lawrence, who will head into this as the favourite, of course, but has definitely got a bit of work to do, you would think, to try and secure that one. Angelo Dortenzio has been rock solid under pressure, putting lap times on the board when he needs it. Alvaro Caraton has gone under the radar as well, but was 4th fastest in Q2. Kekeni as well. Wasn't that quick in Q1, I don't think, but with a really strong lap time, couple of lap times in Q2. With that 27.1, or is it somebody that's going to sneak through? Luero in 7th, Alves, Halliday in 9th, who's already been making fun of the people that have let him get into Q3 in the first place, and then Julian Klaffenborg, who snuck in right there in 10th place as well.
It's going to be interesting. I think the question for me, and this is what hangs in the balance for a lot of this decision on provisional pole position, how much does Otis Lawrence want this? Does he want to turn up and go, you know what, I'm going to put it on pole by 0.3? Because I think he's got the ability and the capability to be able to do so. Maybe not by 0.3, it's a very competitive field. But for a matter of speech, let's say it like that. Or does he want to turn up? He knows he's quick enough. He knows he has the ability here. How much is he pushing? Is he at 100% throughout the course of this lap? Or is he maybe just sat at about 90% knowing, okay, top 4 here, I could probably win this race from this point in time?
We should be in the 26s. I think that's the first thing that we should put out there. With Otis Lawrence, I think there's an element of you want to enjoy it as well.
Yeah.
I don't think you turn up if you were not looking to enjoy it, but he'll know he has the speed. He'll know that he'll be able to pull something out of it from absolutely nowhere if he does find himself thinking, hang on a minute, I'm 7th fastest, even though I find it unlikely. I'm 7th fastest after the first runs. Let me just drop in a standard 26.8 or something and take pole by a little bit of a margin. But Tamas Kokeni at the moment, the only driver out on circuit. You presume this is going to be a used tyre run as he attacks the curbs through the S's of the first sector. Another driver that's similar to somebody like Caraton, similar to somebody like Luero, has just gone under the radar, but has got a real shot of competing for, well, a front row start, you would definitely say, for Kokeni.
Absolutely. It's going to be one that I think we'll keep an eye on. Could be a bit of a dark horse over this session so far. Similar to what we saw with Caraton in Q1 and Q2. Wasn't necessarily the one making waves, with the exception of that first Q2 run. But obviously, as we get into Q3, this is where the headlines are made. This is where everybody's attention is narrowed down by more than half that it was at the start of Q1. And everything is going to be to play for. I want to know people's predictions. And not just for provisional pole position, but for lap times as well. I want to try and get down to close to 3 figures.
I think I was pretty close, right? I think I said something like 284, maybe?
Something like that, yeah.
I don't think that would have got me through, but not that I would be able to set that lap time. Anyway, I'd be about 2 seconds slower than that, plus the rest probably. But Kokeni through the Casio triangles. We wait for those prediction lap times to just bubble away. This is going to be the benchmark from Tamas Kokeni. It's a 27.404 on the used tyres. And you would imagine everybody's going to go faster than that at some point. But if we do remember back to Austria a couple of weeks ago, it was a bit of an anticlimax right at the end of the session. We didn't have a lot of improvements. Conrad Bohn was one of a few drivers that got a really competitive lap time in. That was what propelled him to that pole position as other contenders fell by the wayside. They didn't find the time in those final runs.
Absolutely right. I've watched back Austrian and saw the end of that qualifying and saw, it was a bit of an anticlimactic. You stole the word from me, but I think Japan here gives us a little bit of something different. Obviously, we've got that long run down towards the final corner. It replicates somewhat of Spa, obviously, the long run down towards the bus stop, and obviously here being the Casio Triangle. It's very much similar, with the exception of that kind of final curve through the right here at Suzuka. But it's much of the same elements, especially relating to how much you use the battery through that long straight and down towards the hairpin.
Definitely. So many different ways you can try and attack this circuit, and lots of different skills and pieces that make up your arsenal are going to be tested as Gal, who was fastest, let's not forget, in qualifying 2, attacks turn 1 and 2 for the first time in qualifying 3. A lot of numbers, not quite as easy as ABC. As he heads over the curb, uses the curb there through the S's, riding it. It can really unsettle the car. They don't bottom out as much as they did in the ground effect era, so you can be a little bit more punchy with it. But still, definitely, they can be curbs of death from time to time. We need to remember. Heading up towards the two deckers, it's a 31.8 through the first sector, clatters the inside curb, but that is a competitive start to the lap time from Gal.
It certainly is, and of course we know that one sector alone isn't going to be able to do it, but it was just shy of a tenth quicker than Otis Lawrence in the opening. That driver is just behind. If we look behind, you can just see for the briefest moment there, that was Otis Lawrence just sneaking his way through the hairpin as well, and will chase Tamas Gal up towards Spoon Curve, the double left-hander that comes thick and fast for the driver, and again just navigating that nice and calmly before burning everything that they've got in their tank. The straight line mode opens down towards 130R.
Flash of baby blue with Lawrence, who will just be heading over the crest now on the run up to 130R. But this looks like a serious lap time here from Tamas Gal. Just the Casio triangle left to negotiate, right up to the white line, right up to the edge of the grass, heading into turn number 16 and 17. This has looked very nice indeed for Gal. Up to line we go, 26.9 first drive to get into the 26s. What is Lawrence's response? It's a 27 flat.
It would have been really funny if he'd done the same lap time 3 times in a row.
Definitely.
And that's why we have internal thoughts, everybody. That's not something say out loud. Everybody else started to make their way up towards the line. Peso, Jan Halliday, through the Casio triangle and up towards the line themselves, looking to try and set their benchmark of the afternoon, 27.373, followed closely by Ruben Pedreño as well, in towards the final few corners.
The Aston Martins, both green machines inside the top 10. Bit of orbital for Pedreño through the Casio triangle, goes fourth fastest. Look at how close that is. Second, third and fourth separated by 26 milliseconds. Alves to P6, Plattenbort to P7, Dortenzio with a 27.2. Late for Caraton, who's very aggressive over the curve through the Casio triangle. Doesn't get him a little bit of lap time up to the line. 27 flat. Another driver in the 27 zeros goes fifth fastest, just ahead of Dortenzio. But this is shaping up very nicely indeed. Tamas Gal, that lap time looked really, really nice. He's got 3/4 of a tenth between himself and that group behind.
You're absolutely right. Lots to learn from and lots to try and develop as well as we make our way through the course of this session so far. Tamas Gal from Otis Lawrence as Gabriel Quintino leaves the session, just getting themselves prepared and ready for that race lobby that will be coming up in the next few moments. But we have got just a brief, again, lull in affairs as drivers get themselves back towards pit road. Tamas Kokine as well, the first driver to make it back, followed by Gal and Lawrence, who I think Tamas might have bailed from that opening lap, of course, was the first to set their lap and has subsequently dropped all the way down to 10th place on that used set of compound of tyres. It's not a very warm track here at Suzuka. 21 degrees track temperature, 15 degrees in the air, so a little bit of chill here in Japan.
15 degrees air temperature. What I would give to experience that right now. Oh my goodness. But 3.5 minutes just over left in the session. Once again, difficult to know who's the favourite. Is it starting to swing the pendulum of momentum heading over to Tamas Gal, fastest in Q2, only driver currently in the 26s. We'll have to wait and see if anybody can try and challenge that 26.95925. Numbers are difficult, everybody. I might be dyspraxic, let's be honest here. Heading into the final runs of the session, but you've got Lawrence, Luero, Pedrino and Caraton separated by just 0.04 of a second. And then that group behind that were either on a set of the used tyres or didn't quite hook the lap up. Still waiting to see maybe the outright potential of Angelo D'Ortenzio in this qualifying session. And then from everybody else, there's still an opportunity for somebody, maybe just with a late run, just to upset the apple cart.
You're absolutely right. It's going to be the question of, I think, who hits that track condition at its absolute optimum condition. We've seen in the chat down below on YouTube, someone has made the early prediction. They think Tamas Gal is going to be the one to take pole position here. Their current lap at 26.925, certainly looking the way to be competitive enough. The only driver so far today to be able to hit into that 126 mark. Which is Lawrence just 0.3 off doing the same, and I'm sure when they start to set their competitive final run, we are going to see more and more drivers in towards that 126 mark. It will be the Alpine rather of Otis Lawrence that is first out. They've decided they want to lead this procession and will start to do so.
Do we think, everybody, yourself included, TK, do we think that that time from Gal is going to be enough? Do we think there's going to have to be a significant improvement, or do we think he's in and around the right kind of region to keep hold of that provisional pole position, turn it into a physical pole position?
I think he's in the right first decimal. I think it's going to be in the 126.9s. I don't think he's going to get pole with it, though. There needs to be time.
Could we get into the 8s?
I don't think so. I think we'll be in the 26.9s. But I think that 24 thousandths of a second margin, someone's just going to kind of nip him in the bud a little bit.
Not quite a yawning chasm between himself where he is and the 26.8s, but yeah, definitely still an opportunity for somebody just to jump into that gap if Gal doesn't improve. And it will be Otis Lawrence, F1 Sim Racing World Champion, everybody. That will be first to lead us out for the final runs of our qualifying session. Second fastest at the moment, needs to find at least 0.07 of a second, little bit more, to challenge that provisional lap time that Gal has set. The gauntlet laid down by the Cadillac driver. What can Lawrence try and chase?
That is the question. Split was 0.960. It says fake tattoo in the YouTube live chat. So all to play for, of course, as we make our way up towards Casio Triangle. Otis Lawrence about to either put down a showcase for every one of our drivers, or Tamas Gal will have a lot of confidence going into race day. Here this afternoon, Otis Lawrence powering out through the Casio Triangle. A little bit of a wiggle for the Alpine, but nonetheless, towards the line they go to start their final run.
This will be the gauntlet for everybody to chase. You and imagine if Lawrence doesn't find the improvement to take over from Gal, everybody else will be thinking, hang on a minute, there's a real opportunity here, especially with the championship leader, Joris Krozen, down in 13th on the grid as he really attacks those curves, carrying a lot of speed through the S's, really trying to find time the first part of the lap, hustling it through turns 5 and 6 and up towards Dunlop. Do we keep it pinned? You bet we keep it pinned, and still with a decent amount of battery left to deploy as well. What is the first sector split? Got to be in the mid to high 31s, and he's found 0.06 of a second already.
Absolutely good lap so far from Otis Lawrence. Checkered flag flies on qualifying. No driver can start a final lap time. That's not going to phase any of them. All of our drivers have started their final runs. Lawrence now up through hairpin and down towards Spoon Curve, using all of the circuit on the right-hand side, making the circuit as short as possible for that Alpine car. And up towards the double left-hander of Spoon. Again, attacking it nice and calmly. He doesn't look under pressure, and he's got a lot of battery making their way through.
The minimum speed that these guys carry, my word, keeping that speed so high through Spoon. Saw it through the hairpin as well. Beautiful run. And there is your delta. Over a 10th up. So it'll be over to you, Tamas Gal, because Otis Lawrence is about to steal provisional pole away, barring any maladies through the final sector. Beautiful run again through the Casio triangle. A lot of curb heading up towards 18. Lawrence to the line. Lawrence into the 26.8. What has everybody else got?
Tamas Gal through Casio. Can they try and improve on what they had? Loero, 8.96. Cross the line for Gal. Can't find improvement this time around. So they will start from a best position of P3. Behind them, Angelo D'Ortenzio making their way up towards the final corner. Caraton just in front of them. As more cars come across the line, do not find improvements. Dranio did go fourth. Replaces Caraton, goes fastest across the line for 8.66.
What a lap time from Caraton. D'Ortenzio only 6th. Alves to 7th. We wait for Klaffenburg to the line. Didn't quite see where they went. It was Halliday, I believe, in 7th. Invalidated for Klaffenburg. Unfortunate at the end. But Alvaro Caraton steals it away from Otis Lawrence at the end. Takes it by 0.02 of a second. Alejandro Loera was chasing Lawrence down, separated by just 3 milliseconds. Top 6 separated by less than a 10th. All of them in the 26s. Gal, it wasn't enough. We were questioning, wasn't enough. Bumped down to P4 as he failed to find the improvement. Pedrino D'Ortenzio, Alves, Halliday Klaffenburg, and Kenny the top 10. But another, and we say it every single week, another enthralling qualifying session.
Absolutely fantastic. And I thought for a moment that my graces were going to be saved by only 8,000 of a second by Lawrence. Then Caraton had to go along and blow everything out of the water by 34 thousandths of a second. So that explains exactly where that prediction went through, that we weren't going to get into the 26.8. But nonetheless, I'm happy to be proved wrong. It's one of the best parts of this job, personally.
We like being made to look like fools and or idiots on a regular basis.
Debatable.
Debatable. We'll see. We'll see what happens in the race, where we call the strategies all wrong and say somebody's going to win, and probably forget the safety cars turned off as well. But yeah, impressive benchmark laid down there from Alvaro Caraton. I think you probably were one of the people that saw that one coming. You were coming back to him saying he just sort of got under the radar through Q1 and Q2, being competitive without necessarily standing out. I think was in the top 5 in both of them, and then with a really strong lap time at the end to take it away.
He's one of those drivers that we see so often inside of F1 Sim Racing that goes a little bit under the radar, has done so well over the career so far, and always looks strong when he races at those top levels of league racing. So I think in the back of my head, there was always something about Caraton that I knew when he started to put those laps in, especially through Q2, that he was really going to start making waves. Didn't quite expect him to take pole. I hold my hands up to that one, otherwise I would have predicted it and made myself look smart. But nonetheless, I'm happy to see him take pole.
Yeah, and I think there will be people that will be surprised that it wasn't Otis Lawrence on pole, but he's, of course, right in the thick of that battle. Only missed it by a couple of hundredths. Alejandro Loera, though, Alex Lofer, really impressive performance from himself. Was right up there for the majority of that session. Was chasing Otis Lawrence down in Q3 as well. Definitely another guy that's very much going to be in contention to try and pick up this race win.
Absolutely right. One to keep an eye on, I think, as we head in towards that race. However, shall we head for a quick little break whilst we get the lobby sorted out in the back end? I think that's a smart idea.
Say goodbye for a moment.
It's not goodbye. It's just see you later.
Ah, yes. What's a term that I can think of quickly? We'll be right back. There you go. We are now back after...
You've muted yourself somehow. Oh.
What's gone on? I'm not
Discord.
even muted. Has Discord had a funny?
I think it has.
I'm going to have to go back now. Go back. Pretend it didn't happen.
Hold on.
We are back because we said we'd be right back. And back right now is now. I didn't say it right that time. Yes. It gets more unhinged every week, everybody. By the time we get to round 12, it's going to be like a fast show sketch. Qualifying was very exciting. Probably somebody we didn't necessarily expect to be on pole. I think only because Otis Lawrence was the overwhelming favourite, but we know we've seen Alvaro Carreton in F1 Esports and F1 Sim Rating for many years as well. So was going to be one of the perennial contenders. But that opening lap, we've seen it a number of times this season. That's your best opportunity. If you're slightly out of position, you try and force the issue. Try and make up a couple of places because you can catch people out with your battery usage. You can be a little bit creative, especially around a circuit like this where there aren't too many regulation overtaking opportunities. We're thinking into the Casio Triangle, thinking turn 1, of course, at the end of the main straight. The hairpin as well, going to be a big one. If you can maybe just hook it around the outside of a couple of people through the S's, that's a few freebies handed out straight away. And you're already looking better going into the middle sector.
Absolutely right, and it's going to be that key overtaking opportunity to really try and develop and open up in almost towards the Degners, because you don't want to go too wide through that section of corners. It doesn't tend to end too well for the majority of drivers, and then by the time you've kind of figured out those, hairpin comes, spoon comes, and actually before you know it, you're running through 130R to finish off the lap. So the S's really are going to be that critical sector of this lap.
And the Degners, it's a good point you raised there. They are very treacherous because those curbs can Tony Hawk you, whether it's the first part or the second part. You just bottom out. You just get dragged along the curb into the gravel that lies waiting, and then the wall eventually as well. So you have to be really precise. If you're heading into their side by side, I'm going to be wishing you good luck because that can be a little bit tight.
Very tight, I think, is the way to look at it, because it is not a section of corners. I don't think most of the Japanese circuit you really want to go too wide on, because it is not one that favours a lot of overtaking spot. Maybe with that exception of the back straight and maybe through spoon if you're really feeling brave, but actually, if anything, that's going to compromise you on that long run down towards the Casio Triangle. So I think a lot of this here at Suzuka is going to be that mental game. It is going to be that aspect of how much am I willing to give up? How much am I willing to lose out on to then favour on almost later on in the lap and later on in the race? That's going to be the question.
Tells you how much F1's changed when, if we're looking at 130R, that's probably one of the places where we might see drivers side by side more often than not. But the championship leaders down in P13, 2 esports stars on the front row as we go racing for the Japanese Grand Prix. Round 5 of the season, Carreton with a good launch. Leaves Lawrence a little bit under pressure. Contact already. Aston Martin thrown into the barrier. Hulkenberg star from 2010. Not sure who it was, but there was a flutter of carbon fibre thrown up from a number of cars. Gal already through on Pedrino, battling over 4th and 5th, just keeps it around the outside. Another car going slowly. That might be Shannon Clay at the back, and it was the Aston Martin of Jan Halliday who was caught up there, who was pitched sideways into the Armco less than 5 seconds after hitting the loud pedal. And Clay with front wing damage. Not good news as Tulki puts one over on Chonstos. Now drops behind the Alpine of Quintina. Quintina making up for lost time, up to 16th already, disposing of Chonstos, disposing of Tulki, but Carreton still comfortable out in front, but all hell breaking loose in the midfield clearly.
Really not the way they'd like to see this race started so far, and as you're rightly saying, it was Jan Halliday. More contact as well through hairpin, just slightly further behind our field of vision as more drivers picking up front wing damage. Tamas Kokone alongside Ton Sahur. That's still Tony Hightower, who's rejoined the lobby in 15th as it stands, and more damage you can see on the Cadillac. I think front right end plate missing, actually both end plates missing for that Cadillac outfit. The Audi in front, should I say, has come off scot-free at the time of saying, but up at the front it's still Carreton from Lawrence from Loureiro.
Feels like a bit of a tongue twister, doesn't it? That into the Casio Triangle for the first time. Little look, perhaps, from Loureiro up the inside of Lawrence. Kokeni still struggling with effectively a wooden spoon acting as his front wing, battling away with Chonstos. Car off the road. I think that was Chonstos trying to work his way through. Quintino's dropped back behind Tulki and Chonstos. Battle as McLaren. I think that's Steven Varzo looking to move forward. Championship leader up a couple of places to P11. Yellow flags out for Clay, who is out of the race. Wobble there for Varzo over the curb. Dortenzio through. Dortenzio lagging, in fact, did just for a moment get ahead of Nelson Alves. Now thrown back behind the Williams and Taika Hardy into P8.
Just realised we're not going to be able to go on board for any of these laps because they're just at max revs the entire time, and nobody really wants to hear that. So that's always a fun thing. Thanks, EA. Yeah, as you said, I think Dortenzio, either a bit of lag or a little bit of screen freezes, which has just yanked him backwards a number of positions. Chonstos is finally past Kokone, up to 16th in towards the second Degner curve. There's a lot of chaos in this midfield as it stands. No safety cars to save our driver's graces. Shanika Clay already out at the end of lap 1 after that earlier damage.
Ooh. Big dive bomb. I think that's Bohm down the inside of Quintana, who may have come up second best. Through goes the Aston Martin of Halliday, still basking it out the trio over the wooden spoon in 19th, 20th and 21st. Is Quintana now relegated to the back of the pack after getting himself up to 16th halfway around the opening tour of this race circuit. Tamas Gal, 4th at the moment, under a little bit of pressure from Ruben Pedrino, but still Alvaro Caraton comfortable out in front through 130R. Luera with a slightly wider line, with Gal keeping it more over to the left-hand side. Angelo Dortenzio trying to make up for lost time outside of the Casio triangle. Turns to the inside of 17, manages to pick the pocket of Tycho Hardy, with Clafenborg getting a little bit balked and is going to be on the back foot. Battles all over the show as Beisner meets the full force of Tulki, relegated down into 15th. The two Haas cars getting stuck in with Vaso as well. Have to be the long way around into turns 1 and 2. Keeps it around the outside for just a moment as Dortenzio now back behind, in fact inside Tycho Hardy, still ghosting through the Racing Bulls car, through the sweeps of the first sector. Big slide that for Ruben Pedrino as well, all crossed up, all out of shape, just about kept it held as Dortenzio finally through on Hardy. Can he make it stick? We'll have to wait and see if he screen freezes back down the road.
I think questions have to be asked about Ferrari at this moment in time, because they've invented cloaking technology, by the looks of things, to allow Angelo Dortenzio to try and work their way through on Tycho Hardy and in towards the hairpin. It looks to be the way that they are slowly but surely making some progress through. Sabrino up past Kokone as well for 17th place. That Cadillac, with both end plates missing, is going to be really dropping faster than lead balloon at the moment here at Suzuka. But up towards Spoon Curve once again. Ton horse, still Tony Hightaler after the earlier qualifying session on the back of Jensen Rosen, and in turn Joris Krozen as well. But up at the front, the gaps have started to work their way out, and the Kings have started to develop less and less.
Still losing places, Kikeni. Through goes Jan Halliday in the Aston Martin. There's a bit of a gap that's formed between Chonstos and Sergio Sabrina. Luero through on Kikeni as well. Bohm should relegate the Cadillac to the back of the pack down the inside into the Casio triangle. It doesn't necessarily leave the space there for the Cadillac on the left-hand side, who's squeezed into the grass and gets a little bit of a shoulder barge for good measure as Bohm makes their way through. Sabrina with the fastest lap of the race. Clay leaving the session. Unfortunate retirement early on, courtesy of that damage that was picked up in that first lap kerfuffle, but still Caraton from Lawrence, from Luera, Gal and Pedrino, our top 5. Pedrino still looking racy on the back of Gal, getting over his Code Brown moment from this time on the previous lap, where he was all out of shape, almost perpendicular to the road through turns 4 and 5, and almost pushing the Cadillac of Gal too up the hill through Dunlop. We can't really go side by side. You're going to be a brave man to throw it to the inside of Degner 1. Little bit of a love tap to the back of the Cadillac, but matters not as we continue to soldier on.
I'm surprised there hasn't been an intervention maybe from the stewards here at this moment in time with what we saw earlier on. And of course, Shanika Clay, I think from what I can understand, was driven through, or felt he was driven through right from the very start and right from the very get-go, causing that damage. We obviously saw the likes of Peso, that's Jan Halliday, who had the earlier instance on the start-finish straight. Not the finest of race starts, I think, from the Aston Martin. Something they can learn from heading into the rest of the season. Obviously, a lot of issues heading the way from Angelo Dortenzio with the internet connection that they appear to have as it stands. Larry Tulki with a beautiful move there as Jensen Rosen appears to pull over to the right-hand side of the circuit. I wonder what's going on there.
Yeah, it was side by side through Spoon with Tony Hightaler, but now getting out of the way of absolutely everybody and throwing himself to the back of the pack. I wonder if that's a retirement, as that's Luera on the offensive, attacking Lawrence into the Casio triangle. And Otis Lawrence, F1 Sim Racing World Champion, has to get his elbows out very briefly there, and still under the microscope with the Red Bull tucked up underneath the rear wing of the Alpine. Tamas Gal still having to be aware of the Aston Martin of Pedrino as the Trin Green Machine sets the fastest lap of the race down in P17. This top 5 look like they've got a little bit of a pace advantage over Nelson Alves, who's sitting comfortably in P6 and hasn't really made any impression on the group in front at the moment. Happy to play that spectator's game as once more we see Pedrino almost pushing Gal through the apices of the sweeps of the first sector, and now Nelson Alves enters the fray there. Good run up through Dunlop.
Top 6 starting to form a pack amongst their own. Angelo Dortenzio will be hoping, praying and begging everything in that Scuderia Ferrari car that they can join this fray and continue to make their way through, which they've done so successfully. 3.5 tenths now between themselves and Nelson Alves just in front. But of course, We talked about Luero, who was for a moment attacking Otis Lawrence in towards the Casio triangle. They have to be careful. Tamas Gal behind them, and in turn Ruben Pedreno as well. Looking very racy in this opening stint of the race. A fifth of the way through almost already here in Suzuka. The time does seem to fly past. It's a very fast and flowing circuit, albeit an incredibly long one when you get to the nooks and crannies of it. But of course, those 27 laps do tend to fly by quicker than you can probably say Suzuka.
Time for some tyre chat. See Nelson Alves there on the hard compound tyre, so doing a good job to keep with that lead group of 5 on the mediums. Hardy and Klaffenburg also on the hard, same as Kroos, and championship leader out of position 13th on the grid. Then a big cluster of drivers from 14th downwards. Kroos now enters the top 10 for the first time at the expense of the McLaren of Steven Varzo, who's just bumped down into 11th. Fastest lap again goes the way of Jan Halliday, who's got some really strong race pace after the poor start. Inside of turn 1, that's Larry Tulke, who made a good start as well. Pushes Tony Heitler down into position 13 with Bison and Chonstos, who have been at each other on the previous lap. Just watching and waiting, as there is our second retirement, is Jensen Rosen in the McLaren, who jumps out of it, leaving us down to 20.
To be expected, I think, after that earlier almost pull off to the side, making their way down towards 130R. I wonder if technical issues might have been causing, or at least the culprit for a lot of that. We do see Nelson Alves still on the back of Ruben Pedreno, making their way through the second Degner up towards hairpin, and not giving Tamas Gal an inch of space. Alves not giving Pedreno an inch of space as well. And Andrew D'Ortenzio has started to find form. Lucas Beisner up past Gabor Chonstos in through hairpin. Inside line was the favoured one this time around for the second Ferrari on circuit. Chonstos holds the inside line through the long right-hander, opening up towards Spoon Curve. They're still side by side now as Beisner tries to hold it. Does go deep in towards the corner. A little bit of contact between the Ferrari and the Mercedes off the circuit when Chonstos. The move's made by Beisner, but I question for how long here, as he's got a good run, has Chonstos down towards 130R.
Really trying that cutback into 130R. Getting the slipstream from the Audi is Beisner. Having to duck back in behind the Ferrari goes Chonstos. Really the cork in the bottle there, Tony Heitler, who balked them heading into Spoon. Now gets a tap from the back. That's Sergio Sobrino into the rear of Chonstos. Does well to gather that slide. Through goes Jan Halliday with a freebie. To the outside goes Gabriel Quintino as well to relegate Sobrino down a further spot. Bump back down to reality for Sergio Sobrino, winner of round number 1. This is the second time we've seen him this season, and it's from hero to zero, really, from first down to 18th, make it 17th as he gets back past the Alpine of Quintino to the outside of turn 3 and does keep hold of that lowly 17th position with Bone just on the back. And then Kokeni, who's still pounding round with that front wing damage, but now 5 seconds disconnected at the back of the pack.
I think it's that tough realisation, isn't it, when you know you've got no safety car to come and save you. You know you've got to do everything in your power, and actually at the moment you're probably too early even for a long shot undercut. That's what the driver will be trying to hope to get towards, probably the next couple of laps, to take the hard tyres right until the very end. We mentioned tyres earlier in the broadcast. Let's not forget about them here, as most drivers split, well, almost every driver split between the mediums and the hard compound tyres. It's the top 5 all on the mediums. Nelson Alves probably the best hard runner at the moment. I must remember they started in 7th, so have gained one from where they started. Andrea D'Ortenzio is the driver that drops 1 place in favour of that, but I think that's more to do with screen freezes and lag issues than anything else from those opening lap shenanigans. There was brief yellow flags as Tamas Kokene, I think, had a bit of a moment through the second Degner curve. I think we can almost certainly blame that on the front wing damage, but Otis Lawrence takes race lead then in towards the Casio triangle to start off lap 8.
Back into a more familiar position of P1 at the head of the snake. Finally makes his move at the end of lap number 7. What's the riposte from Carreton? Looks like the Williams is happy to let the Alpine play the chariot now for the next few laps until we reach the pit stop phase. Luera still comfortable in 3rd from Gal and Pedrino. Alves remaining to do a good job on those hard tyres that you would probably say now are in the ascendancy and have been for a couple of laps maybe over the mediums. As this is Kokeni into the pits, had a trip off the road through Degner 1 and 2. Doesn't look to be retiring, so I can respect that resilience for the moment at least, as I think there's been a problem for D'Ortenzio. Is that another screen freeze because he's dropped behind Hardy and Klaffenburg on the run up through Dunlop? And problems again for the Scarlet Ferrari car, handing over places on a silver platter, not down to his own driving.
It seems to be a case of bad to worse for D'Ortenzio here. Every single time he makes the positions up again, and a little bit of moment there through the hairpin, just dropping back in Joris Kroos and giving him a love tap for good measure. It just seems to be a day that he can't seem to recover what he's losing quick enough. It's like trying to fill up a bucket that's got holes in it. Every time he manages to get to that top level, he takes a break, takes a breather, and all the water empties out once again. So he's never going to be able to overcome those demons that seem to be facing him here at the moment. But they'll run down towards 130 once again. Lawrence leads. with a convincing 3/10 or so. Of course, burns a lot of battery through that opening run. And again, gains a 10th, just Caraton Luero not far behind in the fray as well. We're on lap 8 of 27, heading on to 9 of 27. Tom, we've already approached 1/3 race distance.
Who'd have thunk it? Had some nice action so far. Opening lap was absolute carnage, as it usually is in these 26 cars. But still, as we were, fastest lap again goes to the Aston Martin of Jan Halle, who's still only down in P16 on the set of the hard compound tyres. Watch out for him, though, because he's clearly got some very strong race pace. And the first break in a DRS train isn't until you get to the car behind Halliday, which is P17. Sergio Sabrini with Contini also disconnected, has Bone for company in 18th and 19th, and then Kilkenny. Look at the Aston Martin there of Halliday almost pushing Chonstos in the Mercedes through turns 4 and 5 and up through Dunlop, looking like he wants to try and get a shift on here. The problem is not too many overtaking opportunities, as Chonstos just has to move over to the middle of the road to prevent any semblance of a look to the inside into the Degners. Do we see the dive bomb? Seen a couple of them into the hairpin. But I think the Aston Martin just a little bit too far back, thought about it and even tapped the back of Chonstos, so a little bit indecisive there. Wasn't going to go for it then, potentially saw an opportunity, then bailed out of it again, but didn't get out of it quick enough because he tapped the back of the Merc.
Both Aston Martin are looking very racy in the opening stages of this Grand Prix so far. The question is who's going to send it first? Will it be Jan Halliday? Will it be Ruben Pedreño? That is going to be the question that I think might be answered, because Tamas Gal has started to lose time to Luero just in front, and the top three are still looking solid. Here comes Caraton, though, looking for an opportunity in towards Casio, not quite, and just plays the patient game. Does the Atlassian Williams racing driver. And through the triangle and out of the final corner, they run to start lap 10 of 27. Chonstos, and here is Jan Halliday side by side through the final few corners. And a few drivers in towards the pits. Angelo D'Ortenzio caught the 10-second speeding in the pit lane penalty. Heartbreak for the young man from Ferrari.
Not good news, having internet issues, and now with a 10-second penalty slapped over his head, and decides that is that. But the man second in the championship will score no points in Japan, opening the door potentially for Joris Krozen. But the problem for Krozen is hasn't had the best of races so far, but still over half race distance left to go. And I think on the hard compound tyres is Krozen after qualifying down in P13. So this race could come back to the championship leader later on, with Liam Stevens also absent. Opportunity to open up that championship lead even more. But still Lawrence from Caraton. Looked like Caraton was maybe thinking about it to the outside of the Casio triangle into the previous, or on the previous tour, but just shepherded over to the extremities of the circuit by Lawrence, who's making it clear you're not going to be going around the outside of me there, mate. But once again, nose to tail, the Alpine and the Williams heading into Spoon. Looks like Lawrence was maybe a little bit wide, going for that later apex through the second part of Spoon to get himself a good run to charge down towards 130R, which is where Caraton at this stage has been burning his ERS.
And you're right, and this could be where we see a move made, because he knows that Lawrence seems to be weak in towards the Casio triangle. 0.05 of a second separating in towards the Casio triangle goes Alvaro Caraton, taking race lead back as we start on to lap 11 here. It lasted just 3 laps with Otis Lawrence in the lead of this Grand Prix. And that was Otis Lawrence once again playing the chasing game as Tamas Gal and Larry Torquay both into pit road this time around. The Alpine once again playing chase as we head into lap 11 of 27. The Alpine knows what they've got to do. They've got to be patient, but of course they need a strategy for when they're in the lead of this race here. They've got to try and make opportunities.
Punch and counter punch, and both of them have to be careful now of Tamas Gal too, who has gone for that undercut strategy. Whether it's going to be one lap or whether these guys decide to stay out a little longer remains to be seen. Luera is still going. Yellow flag, I think that's for Conrad Bohm through turn 3, who seems to have dropped it, taken a trip off the road. Yes, in the grass, heading towards that Pirelli tyre wall. Problems there for Bohm, who's thrown out of contention for any kind of result. I don't think Bohm's been through the pits. He's had a couple of issues struggling to get the power back down with the gravel and the dirt all over those tyres. But we return to the leaders, Caraton, Lawrence and Luero. What do they do on this lap? Nelson Alves looking racy behind Ruben Pedreño as well in the battle for 4th and 5th on the road, as we watch and wait for those sector times of Tamas Gal on the new hard compound tyres to start coming in.
Yeah, we'll keep an eye on those as they start to make their way up to us in the commentary box. Interesting note, Tamas Kokone, the driver that has apparently got the purple first sector, so looks impressive through the S section. Here comes Lawrence around the outside of 130R, the world champion of F1 Sim Racing World Championships, retakes the race lead just 1 lap later. The Alpine again, and now in command of this race and almost immediately in towards pit road. He wanted to get that move done because he knows how much battery you can save heading through the pits now.
thought that would be the strategy. Once he made that move, get into the lead and then get straight into the pits, get that battery charged and lock down that position that you've got. Pedrinho stays out along with Alves, of course, Tycho Hardy and the two Haas cars continuing onwards. Sixth place is now Jan Halliday, who's had some strong pace but has Lucas Beissner and Gabor Chonstos to deal with. But where is the Cadillac of Tamas Gal? Here he comes down the main straight, definitely going to be ahead of Loera. Is he ahead of Caraton? Yes, I think Powell's around the outside. So a couple of places made up for Tamas Gal, shows how crucial that move Otis Lawrence made before the pit stops was made also. So he is still the net race leader, now from Gal, ahead of Caraton and Loero.
Good stop from Lawrence, timed it perfectly to avoid being overtaken by Tamas Gal. Of course, went one lap earlier compared to everybody else. Few drivers, the likes of Stephen Varso, and of course, Larry Tilke went an additional lap earlier. Should I say actually it was Tonton Tontahur, that's Tony Haitala, so went a lap earlier than everybody else. It was Larry Tilke that went a number of laps later, actually same lap that we saw Tamas Gal in. The question is now going to be the drivers that are on the hard compounded tyres, everybody that hasn't pit, so that's 2nd through 10th, the exception being Ruben Pedrinho, still out there on the mediums.
And you feel like Nelson Alves needs to try and make a move here at some point. Don't want to waste what's left of those hard tyres, especially if you've got Tycho Hardy nipping at your heels already past the Williams, but clatters into the Aston Martin, into the Casio triangle. That is Ruben Pedrinho off into the runoff area. I don't think he's going to be a very happy customer there. Tycho Hardy got the move done on Nelson Alves, wasn't satisfied with just the one spot as he slammed into the side of the Aston Martin, sent him spinning backwards, and now Pedrinho retires in the pits. That was one of the drivers that was in the conversation to pick up a race victory, and another one of that top 4 in the championship having issues. Dortenzio with problems, now Tycho Hardy with issues too. Doesn't look like there's any damage to the car, but you would think the stewards might be having a look at that one post-race.
Almost certainly. I wouldn't be surprised if there's an extensive investigation into what quite happened there. Stephen Varso dropping a couple of positions as they, I believe, peel their way through. And now I was assuming they might have made their pit stop early, but no, they are just being passed by Larry Tilke and Tony Haitala as well, as drivers do just drop down, or promote themselves rather, past Ruben Pedrinho's now stranded car in towards the opening few corners. Tycho Hardy leads from Alves. From what I can see, doesn't look too happy. Does Ruben Pedrinho in the driver's chat. Lucas Beissner past the driver in the Aston Martin for 7th on track. The Aston Martin will have to do some work. And Nelson Alves also takes race lead. This is going to be an interesting battle for essentially this second pack here, Tom.
Absolutely. These guys on the hard compound tyre looking to go long. Ducking and weaving goes Hardy, looking to take the lead of the race back from Alves. Klaffenborg looking like they want a piece of the action as well, with Joris Krozen just watching, lying in wait as they head into the Casio triangle. The Haas of Klaffenborg just slots in behind Nelson Alves. Still haven't reached half distance, so it'll be a little bit of time, at least for Nelson Alves. But in comes, as I say that, in comes Hardy, and in comes Klaffenborg, and in comes Beissner as well. So it'll be 13 laps on their hard tyres, 14 laps on the mediums to the end of the race. Continue with a 10-second penalty. Will that be retirement number 6? Somebody has smashed through the polystyrene advertising hoardings heading into the pit lane. But as yet, no retirees as Lawrence, Gal, Caraton and Loero power on. Tilke with the fastest lap of the race. These guys are going to be comfortably off the back. Where is Tycho Hardy in relation to our leading quartet? 2 seconds back down the road. This looks like an exclusive club of 4 battling for the race win here.
You're absolutely right, quartet. They might try and work their way forward. Everybody in that top 5 at the moment, from Sergio Sbrino upwards on the hard compound of tyre. Everybody behind them are drivers that have already made that mandatory stop, led of course by Otis Lawrence. Tamas Gal in essentially net race 2nd, Caraton in 3rd, Loero in 4th. That quartet that is being gained upon by Tycho Hardy. It's gained about a second in the last sort of half a lap or so as they make their way in towards the hairpin. Tycho Hardy will be overjoyed at this fact, knowing they can maybe use overtake next time around.
Problem with Hardy is they probably got a little bit of a chat with the stewards. That's why we're possibly not including Tycho Hardy as one of the potential challengers to win this race. But if they can bring the group behind along, Tilke's got some strong pace. Klaffenborg is on a set of the medium tyres, I believe, in that Haas car. So there is an opportunity for these guys if Tycho Hardy can just act as the chariot racer, the horse at the front of this secondary chasing group. The gap has been absolved for the moment, as here comes Klaffenburg through on the run into 130R to dispose of Tulki. Pick up position number 11. Gal and Caraton battling, by the way. That's crucial behind Otis Lawrence into the Casio triangle. Gal with the cold shoulder now to the inside of the last corner. A little bit of banging of wheels as they're still eyeball to eyeball to start lap number 15. Caraton keeping the Cadillac pinned over to the left-hand side. Real squeeze employed by the Williams. He's going to try and dart all the way around the outside. Lawrence just in front. Got to be careful you don't slam into the Alpine, who's a bit of a rolling roadblock at the moment. And now Gal giving a squeeze, giving a bit of a shoulder barge over to the grass. Gloves off racing, and now the contact's made again. Caraton skating through the grass and the gravel in the Williams, out of control, struggling to get the power back down as he spat into the action straight into this secondary chasing group.
I think that's one of those situations, if you give the punches, you've got to be prepared to get the exact same back. And it was elbows out for all of the drivers there. Gal wasn't necessarily having any of that from Caraton as he was pushed wide, two wheels on the grass. You saw the made their way through the opening to the S's, and again in retrying to gain as much track position as possible. I think it was a little bit aggressive, and off went Alvaro Caraton. I can't say, you know, it's hard to disagree with what we saw.
I think you've made your thoughts clear on that one, but it moves Luero now with a couple of free overtakes there. Red carpet rolled out for the Red Bull up into position number 2, net position number 2. Joris Krozen, the race leader at the moment from Alves, then from Halliday, who's just taken that 3rd place on the road ahead of Chonstos, who heads into the pits to get shot of their tyres. And here is Nelson Alves taking the lead on the road, back from Joris Krozen. Sabrino still out there, yet to stop. Then it is Otis Lawrence. Tycho Hardy still getting stuck in. Tamas Gal cannot catch a break at the moment. I think was battling with Hardy into the Casio triangle. Hardy's had an excellent run out of it on those medium tyres, let's not forget. Same as Julian Klaffenburg. They're going to pose a threat to this leading duo because they now haven't got Tamas Gal and they haven't got Alvaro Caraton in the equation too. So this pact of 4 almost on the hard compound tyres leading the way, it's been halved. So at the moment, Lawrence and Luero, both of them have to keep their wits about them because at this stage, Hardy and Klaffenburg with a significant pace advantage.
Absolutely right. The question's going to be longevity, isn't it? We're heading into the final 12 laps of racing here at Suzuka, and the question will be who can look after their tyres, who can look after their battery. And here comes Lucas Beissner trying to make moves on Steven Varso through the Degner corners, and the Ferrari just backing out rather sensibly, not wanting to try and send it too wide into the first and or the second Degner. But the opportunity to try and send a move here at the hairpin. Defensive from Steven Varso. Looks to the outside. Does Lucas Beissner potentially for the switchback? But on the run towards the spoon curve, this will be an opportunity for the Ferrari to try and make waves here, try and make moves as well. And Lucas Beissner, an old wily fox, knowing where they can try and make the advantages work in towards the opening of spoon. I'm going to go for it here, but has to try and get a good exit if they want to run down towards 130R.
It's all over him, isn't he? With those medium tyres compared to the hard tyres of Varso just in front. Varso was one of the early stoppers as well. Tycho Hardy still on the move as Krozen takes the race lead back. I think Luero almost pushing Lawrence there into the Casio triangle. Going to have to deal with some pressure being applied side by side still between Beissner and Varso. McLaren versus Ferrari. And it's Varso who gets the pocket pinched and he gets pushed over onto the extremities of the road. And now Luero has to throw the defensive shape because all over the back of the Red Bull is Tycho Hardy looking to use the medium tyres to great effect as he cruises round the outside of the Red Bull car. And a net second place now for Tycho Hardy on those mediums leaves Otis Lawrence exposed at the front of this train on the hards.
Great move. That's all I can really say about that. Set it up nicely, waited for Luero to try and go defensive into the first corner. Knew that he could try and hold it around the outside. The fresh and medium tyres really coming in clutch and did exactly as they intended to. In towards the first and second Degner now. Otis Lawrence will have to try and play the defensive game or know what Tycho Hardy wants to do in this situation, because Lawrence, as much as he might be in that race lead here, knows he doesn't necessarily have the tyres to try and back this up at this moment in time.
What we need to remember is Tycho Hardy came in pretty early, cut short that hard tyre stint. Remember, Krozen and Alves both still out there on their hard compound tyres. It's going to be a 14-lap stint on the mediums for Tycho Hardy. So yes, making waves at the moment. It's the same case for Julian Klaffenburg. They're making waves at this stage of the race, but will it come back to bite them in the behind by the time we get to lap 25 and onwards? Klaffenburg pushing Tamas Gal, who's still struggling after that tete-a-tete between himself and Caraton, who's also still going. You could just see in the back of picture, making a move on Tony Heitler. Squeeze there as that was Julian Klaffenburg spotting the smallest space outside or around the outside of 130R to take that position away from Tamas Gal.
Great moves. Again, using the Casio triangle to the absolute advantage. And now with the most of the drivers pitting, the only exception being Jan Halliday. Here comes Tycho Hardy, trying to take away net race lead from Otis Lawrence. Swoop to the inside, benefiting from the newer tyres. Tycho Hardy into net race lead here in Suzuka. Otis Lawrence down to second once again, with Luero not far behind, wanting to try and stay with this pack. But Hardy's been released. Half a second already in favour of Tycho. And Otis Lawrence knows he has to try and stick with him to know when those hard tyres start to become the beneficiary later in the race.
And I think that might have been round 2 of that scrap. I think they were side by side heading into the Casio Triangle. That was potentially where Hardy got the place in the first place. And then it was Lawrence trying to take it back to the outside, unsuccessful. So like you said, Hardy with the better tyres at this stage now your net race leader. Can he make the most of it, though? Doesn't have the overtake mode, or won't do, or no, I don't think he will do on this lap, because I'm not sure where he got past Lawrence in the first place. Luera's still there. Klaffenborg, 0.8 of a second off the back of the leading trio. Gal, Tulki, Caraton, Heitler and Bison are your top 10. Crozen and Alves, watch for those two as well on brand new medium compound tyres. If they can get a shift on us, that's Steven Varzo. Off on the exit of Spoon Curve into the wall. Lawrence back through on Hardy, who throws the defensive shape to try and keep Luera in his back pocket. Now back down the inside of Lawrence into the Casio Triangle. Can't quite slide it past on that occasion, but resume this battle royale out of the final corner and down the start-finish straight.
Jan Halliday pits. Otis Lawrence now inherits proper race lead. Keep an eye on Luero. Trying to send a move here. Tycho Hardy has to go defensive, but attacking at the same time. In towards the opening corner. Keep an eye on Klaffenbach and Gal just behind, who is starting to make waves in towards the S section here. Luero not far off the back. Yellow flag still again, as I think that is going to be Steven Varso retiring in pit roads, as they unfortunately had that earlier spin through 130R. Sort themselves in the gravel, but Luero looking very fired up at the moment. 8 laps completed on a set of the hard compounded tyres. I think the mediums on board with Tycho Hardy. We've got a limited lifespan left in them.
Absolutely. Has to do 14 laps on this set of tyres. Will they start to fall away slightly here than he would have anticipated? Half a second the gap between himself and Otis Lawrence. Now firmly looking behind rather than forward. Caraton looking to try and recover. There's some contact further back. Crozen to the inside of Heitler. Got that move done. Bison trying to follow through. Slapped the side of the Audi car. Nelson Alves is in the same boat as Crozen. Does not want to get bolted behind both of these two cars. Disposes of Bison on the run into Spoon, but is still caught up behind the Audi of Heitler. Crozen to position number 8 then. Caraton still unable to get past Larry Tulki, but with a good run out of Spoon, might be able to dispose of the second Red Bull Racing car. Still Lawrence out in front comfortably ahead of Tycho Hardy, who's still got Luera to deal with, and he might have Luera alongside him. But Hardy with a big punch at the end of the run into the Casio Triangle, has a look to the inside of Lawrence, flip-flopping all the time as the timer, once again looking backwards at Alejandro Luera as Tulki keeps Caraton at bay.
Loads of battles happening up and down this field at the moment. It's actually quite hard to try and keep an eye on every single one of them. But up at the front 3, still trying to make waves. Alves past Haitala for 9th place. Sergio Sabrino, fastest lap of the race so far. We enter lap 20 of 27. 8 laps to go here in Suzuka so far. Someone in the YouTube chat said, be prepared for Joris. Well, keep an eye on the Haas driver. 8th place as it stands on the back of Alvaro Caraton, making their way through the S section up towards Dunlop Curve. I wonder what they've got in their back pocket. Of course, at the moment, only done 3 laps on a set of the medium compounded tyres. Same as Nelson Alves behind. And have they got enough laps to get enough places here to try and do well? That will be the overarching question.
Certainly has a huge grip advantage. The problem is Caraton's also on the attack, looking at Gal and looking at Tulki in front. Tulki in the middle of the road. Caraton has to go the long way around. Spotting the space is Crozen to the inside, trying to take a place off somebody here. Good run on the outside for Caraton. Now gets him side by side again with Tulki. Just behind, that's Heitler batting away, losing out to Beisner. Crozen has to remain in position number 8. Caraton to the outside of Spoon. Both of them synchronized, spinning off the road. Sliding little bit of contact. Looked like the most insignificant amount of contact, but it sent both of them perpendicular to the road. And once again, Caraton losing places after a bit of contact, this time with Larry Tulki.
One of those horrible corners where the car is already a little bit unstable as you try and throw it into the left hand. A little bit of contact as well is all it needs to remove any grip from the rear tyres around here at Suzuka. Tycho Hardy still under pressure from Luero as well through the final few corners. We start 7 to go here in Suzuka. It's still Lawrence that leads from Tycho Hardy, from Alejandro Luero as well, but the front 3 not looking as comfortable as they have done in previous races. Joris Crozen's up to 6th, and on the back of Tamas Gala as well. He'll look incredibly racy for the next few laps until those medium tyres decide to fall off that cliff that we know them for.
Frozen hasn't had to use any of his tyres, getting past Tulki or Caraton. So that makes his life a little bit easier. Nelson Alves with the same age tyres, both of them are going to be charging in the remaining stages of this race. Got so much more grip compared to Gal on the run up through Dunlop. It'll have to be the outside into Degner 1. No, sensibly bails out of that one. Knows he's still got a lot of time left because he can still see the leaders just up the road. This is the championship leader grabbing the ball by the horns here on the alternate strategy. Gal recharging almost creates a Bearman situation. Now the lockup from the Cadillac invites Alves down the inside of Crozen to take 6th place off the hands of the championship leader. And now it's his turn to try and attack the Cadillac.
Is that little lockup, and I think as well, Tamas Gal going very defensive to the inside. Here comes the Williams. Nelson Alves to the inside of Spoon. Goes wide though. Could have opened up the opportunity for Tamas Gal to retake the place, but I don't think had that in their locker at that moment in time. Joris Crozen will feel a little bit unencumbered here because he's lost not 1 but 2 places, both to Alves, and it felt like he should have had that move made on Gal but couldn't quite get it done when he was required to. Crozen now looks to the outside, the inside for the Casio triangle, and actually before the braking zones even happened, Tamas Gal knows there might not be his fight anymore and allows Crozen through up to 6th place, but it could have been enough to stop him chasing down the leaders, as that is a 4 or 5/10 disadvantage that he's been placed at over that. Keep an eye on Julian Klaffenbach, just a 10th off the back of Luero. I say that, looks to the inside at turn 1, tries to go too wide to open up the S section, the first of the Red Bull Racing cars. Still has the outside, inside now for the right-hander. Little bit of bumping and weaving. They force themselves to stay on the circuit. Julian Klaffenbach really working these medium tyres at the moment. Little wiggle on the car as he tries to hold it, but can't quite on this occasion. Wide though from Luero. Thought about a moment he was going to open up the opportunity for Julian Klaffenbach. He didn't quite have enough in the tank. He'll wait and go again as we enter 6 to go.
Hooper scrap. You could see Klaffenbach on the ragged edge, right on the finite knife edge of the grip limit there as he was going through the sweeps and the S's of the first sector, desperately trying to make that move stick as battles continue in the lower reaches of the top 10. Caraton getting stuck in, this time with Beisner trying to work his way back through the field again. This is the battle for 9th and 10th. It'll have to be Spoon Curve. Won't be the look to the inside because Bison using a little bit of energy to cruise up to the back of Larry Tulki. Will be hoping to put one over on Tamas Gal, who's starting to fall away from the lead group of 6. That'll be bad news for the rest of these drivers who are thinking about maybe pick up a top 5 in this race. Alves close to the back of Klaffenbach, who's on the aging medium compound tyres. Hardy under pressure from Luero. Problems for Klaffenbach, who's lost a hell of a lot of time on the run into 130R. Must be a battery thing as he dumps it coming out of the Casio triangle to try and clear onto the coattails of the leading trio. But we have 5 laps to go, everybody. Plenty of drivers still within a shot of winning this one. It's Lawrence from Hardy, who we still think has a trip to the stewards. Well, we definitely think he's got a trip to the stewards. That's Alves pulling the trick that Klaffenbach tried on Luero in the previous lap. And this time the Williams makes it work.
Fantastic. Absolutely stunning for themselves. And one thing that I've got to keep an eye on, Tycho Hardy looks so impressive onto the brakes in towards the Casio triangle. Time and time again, drivers try and go too wide with him in towards that section of corners, and every time he seems to outbrake them. Joris Crozen through on his teammate Julian Klaffenbach in towards the first Degner. And Crozen now opens up that opportunity to try and chase down, of course, 4-lap fresher tyres than Klaffenbach and on the same age tyres as Nelson Alves. So this could be the pairing to keep an eye out to potentially try and cause upsets as we make our way through this race. A reminder of the tyres on your screen at the moment and how they line up. 11-lap old hard tyres for both Lawrence and Luero, 9-lap mediums, 5-lap mediums, 5-lap mediums for Crozen and Alves, Klaffenbach on 9-lap mediums as well, and everybody else's you can see on your screens there. But the advantage almost certainly has to be in the court of both Alves and Crozen as we make our way through lap 23 as it stands. If you're Tycho Hardy at the moment, you're knowing your 10-lap old mediums are going to be crying.
And this is doing Otis Lawrence a favour as well, keeping those faster guys back. As you can see there, that's the reason why Tycho Hardy so much quicker than Lawrence into the Casio triangle. Lawrence really recharging that battery, presumably to give himself a bonsai exit heading out of it. I think that was a car maybe sideways or in the dirt going through the Casio triangle in the background. We continue on with the leaders. Lawrence still comfortable. 4 laps to go now, getting to the stage where if these guys are going to try and make a move, Tycho Hardy, you feel, doesn't have the tyres left or won't have the tyres left to cling on to a rear guard. Actually, in the closing stages, that was Alves with another really good run, this time at the back of Luero. I think there was a little bit of contact, and still Luero driving in his mirrors because Alves looking every which way, ducking weave behind the Red Bull to try and spot a gap to slide himself alongside.
Luero is playing a really good defensive game here at the moment, knowing that he doesn't have to do anything necessarily out of the ordinary, just have to place that car in the middle of the circuit and allow the track to essentially do the rest of the defending for him. It's a smart move to know, because he hasn't actually lost that much time to Hardy just in front of him. This is all about car placement and not necessarily about compromising your exits every single time. Jan Halliday past Tony Hightower for 12th place on the grid at the moment. Which won't be too much of a concession for them this late in the race. But Nelson Alves knows it could be now or never to try and send a move to the inside of Spoon Curve. Thought about it for half a moment, does try and continue with it. Through the second left-hander, a little bit of contact between themselves and Alejandro Loero. And up towards 130R, the Williams will run side by side with that Red Bull racing car. The opportunity to try and send a move to hold the inside line at 130R. The extra straight line speed that affords him could pay dividends, but Loero thinks about it, tries to go later on the brakes in towards Casio. Little bit too late. Couldn't quite hold alongside enough. Could the Rebel racing car, and this opens up an opportunity for Joris Krozen to try and follow what Alves has just done.
Spooked him offline through Spoon, got the move done in the second part. Alves to the podium, but Loera still very much waiting to try and sense an opportunity. There's the gap spotted into turn number 2. Krozen trying to keep tabs on Alves in front. That means he has to dispossess Loero now of that place. There is contact, and once again we see a car spinning through the S's of the first sector. This time it's Loero who for the second week running is thrown out of a decent finishing position. It was a puncture a fortnight ago in Austria as the rain came down. Now it's contact with 3 laps to go between himself and Joris Krozen.
Not the way you want to see a race go out, but Krozen has benefited from this, of course, now on the back of Nelson Alves, knowing that those times between himself and Nelson Alves are at an equilibrium, not one benefiting from another. 12 lap-old tyres for Tycho Hardy in front, 14 lap-old tyres for Lawrence. Of course, being a hard compound of our race leader, Jan Halliday, past Gabor Chonstos for 9th on the grid so far, making their way up towards Spoon Curve. A little bit of an opportunity opened up potentially for Gabor Chonstos trying to send a move back, but didn't on this occasion. As we're playing the patient game with the remaining laps that we have got. 2.5 to go here in Suzuka. The question is going to be, who is going to take this race win? Will it be Lawrence? Will it be Hardy? Alves maybe in contention as well. But keep an eye on Krozen. I think they could be the dark horse that we mentioned.
The problem for them is Tycho Hardy is still there in the way. And as long as he stays there in second position heading on to the final lap, the chances of them trying to steal this win away from Otis Lawrence are effectively nil. So for Alves and Krozen, you've got to get past Hardy now and give yourself maybe a lap and a half to try and attack the F1 Sim Racing World Champion. But it looks like Hardy for the moment has it covered. Good overspeed into the second part. Through the outside goes Nelson Alves. Spotted the space, had a little bit of a run. Coming down the second half of the main straight, tried to make it work. Just found himself getting the cold shoulder from Hardy through turns 1 and turns 2. And again, that keeps Otis Lawrence comfortable out front. And Alves on the back foot once again having to deal with Krozen.
At what point do you start to turn your attention from lap 26 until this final lap? When do you start to consider how much battery you want for this final lap? Because you know if you attack here, it's going to be almost unbeneficial when we head on to our final lap, 27 of 27. In towards the hairpin, though, does lead Lawrence from Hardy, from Alves and Krozen as well. The front quartet looking rather unaffected. Julian Klaffenbach has joined them as a lot of moves made further back as they are going 2 by 2 through this section of hairpin corners. There is an entire gaggle of cars out here in Japan.
Carreton still working incredibly hard to make up places, so he's going to be fighting over the same piece of tarmac as Gal for the second time in this race. The other thing for Alves and Krozen are, do they know that Hardy could be picking up a penalty? I think they should do, because they were the drivers directly behind the Racing Bull when they clattered into the side of Ruben Pedrino about 10 or so laps ago. As we head into the Casio Triangle for the penultimate time, still your F1 Sim Racing World Champion with everything under control at the head of the field. That is Alvaro Carreton, still on the move, but unable to dispose of Jan Halliday. He's done a really good job to fight up into 7th, make it 6th fairly shortly, you would imagine. Going defensive is Taras Gal. Alves still on the move, spots the space, all out of shape, and he takes Tycho Hardy with him. Sends Joris Krozen championship lead with another couple of freebies into P2. Hardy down to 4th, Alves to 5th. He was out of control, and eventually he was sideways as well.
You could see that little wiggle, the little moment of overcorrection on board with the car as we rode with them through the first corner. And as they tried to correct it, just clattered in to the car that they were chasing down. Alves, the unassuming victim in that case, and it was Hardy. And I think just was a little bit brave and wanted to try and send that moving towards the opening quarter. Final lap shenanigans, of course, being an uncommon occurrence here in the world of F1 Sim Racing. We do see Julian Klaffenbach still under pressure from Tycho Hardy, not free and clear as of yet. But it does open up the opportunity for Krozen to chase down Lawrence on this final lap. They'll deal with Spoon here, Tom. And then it's just one straight run to the line.
Suddenly, Lawrence is sweating here because that contact, that drama, has given Joris Krozen a free run that he would not have had if the carnage didn't happen at the start of the last lap. Lawrence weaving to try and break the toe, 0.2 of a second, as they head into 130R. Will it be the championship leader, or will it be the F1 Sim Racing World Champion? Lawrence in the middle of the road, holds the inside. Is he too late on the brakes? Krozen with the tyre advantage. He's just got a nose to the outside, but the door is slammed in his face. And that means it is Otis Lawrence to the line, who will take it by half a second. Krozen tried all he might on the last lap, couldn't steal it right at the death. Tycho Hardy on the road takes third place back from Klaffenburg, with a trip to the stewards definitely in the offing for Hardy. That could be P3 and P2 for the Haas team. Alves too, with an opportunity perhaps to win the race late. Contact between himself and Hardy ends up with him in P5. Great drive from Jan Halliday to recover after a poor start to 6th. Gal Chonstos, Caraton and Bison are your top 10.
Tell you what, that'll be an interesting trip to the stewards. I think after this race, I'd love to be a fly on the wall in this situation to see quite exactly what has happened and what the defences seem to come their way. But as it stands, Lawrence, Krozen, Hardy, your top 3. I think there could be a situation here, Tom, where Klaffenbach gets back up onto that podium, does secure a Haas 2-3 at this moment in time. Of course, we'll wait for the stewards' verdicts to come and make their way through. But I don't want to say it was expected, because I don't want to say, we don't want to make too many assumptions. But Otis Lawrence, your race winner here in Japan.
At the end of the day, Otis Lawrence wins it. Maybe not in the fashion we would have expected, because he had to work on it unexpectedly on that last lap after the contact that brought Joris Krozen into the fray. Krozen had absolutely no chance, no hope in hell of winning that, if it wasn't for the contact between Hardy and Alves that just swung the door right open for Krozen to barrel on through and give himself a shot into the Casio Triangle. Couldn't quite make it work. That's the experience, you'd have to say, of the F1 Sim Racing World Champion. He does get driver of the day, though, and for the championship leader, really good day. From 13th on the grid, problems for D'Ortenzio, problems as well for Liam Stevens, the fact that he wasn't here. And to take home second place, excellent work. Fastest lap for Kokeni, most overtakes for Jan Halliday, and your cleanest driver, Alejandro Loera, who would have been in that fight, but for some contact between himself and Alves at the latter stages.
It's a tough one to try and digest. We'll run through the order very quickly. Lawrence, Krozen, Hardy, Klaffenbach, Alves. Jan Halliday is then Tamas Gal, Chonstos, Caraton, Bison as your top 10. Turki Luero, Tonton Tahor, Tony Haitala, Sergio Sobrino, Kokene, Vaso, Quintino as your top 17. And then Bohm, D'Ortenzio, Rosen, Clay, some of your DNFs, the number of them that happened here this afternoon. It was a really tough outing for a number of drivers. I think a total of, 7 DNFs or 6 DNFs at the end? Yeah, 7 in total, which is not the finest form that you want to see.
Yes. A lot of people ending their day early. How do you sum that race up? I mean, it was box office to watch. The driving standards at times weren't always great. We had some really nice scraps. We had some less nice scraps, but I think box office the way to go through it. It was really exciting if it wasn't always the cleanest.
Yeah, sometimes you get those races, though, that are a fantastic spectacle to watch, aren't necessarily the cleanest. Obviously, Silverstone, I think 2021 comes to mind. Wasn't the cleanest racing, but it's fantastic and has gone down in history as quite possibly one of the best races that I've seen on TV. Not saying that because Max crashed, but because, all the drama that unfolded. I think because of it afterwards, all of the internet interest, the media interest, the memes that we got out of it were just absolutely spectacular. And sometimes they say the worst moments do provide the best coverage, and that is certainly, I think, one of them that we have got. But interestingly, we've already got Tycho Hardy waiting for us to have a conversation.
Should we have a chat? Should we have a chinwag with a driver that right at the last gasp took third place on the road? Tycho, welcome in. Third place at the moment for yourself, but from the outside at least, looked like quite the action-packed event for you.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, first of all, I killed Ruben, so that was on me. So yeah, I feel bad about that one. But I mean, apart from that, I think I managed the race pretty much as well as I could. Some small errors, especially before I went into the pits, that just cost me unnecessary time. But I got through the field quite nicely, and I think that made my race. And it was nice to, even after the incident, that, I mean, definitely wasn't my fault. Finishing P3, I'll take it.
And just one on the strategy as well, because you did more laps on your mediums than your hards. Was that a preconceived plan that you were going to jump in early to get off the hard tyres?
Yeah, I mean, the lap 1 helped when there was 3 cars in front of me spinning. And I didn't really have a good side of the race, of course, because I was driving myself. But I mean, my engineer was pretty convinced that that was going to be the right call. And I mean, when I came out of the pits, that got confirmed because I was pretty much already in the train. So yeah, I'm happy we can actually do different strats, it seems, on this game, because it's been quite a lot of medium hard. But yeah, I mean, it was the plan from the start to do this pit lap. And yeah, it worked out perfectly. I mean, after qualifying, I could have only dreamed for P3. So yeah.
I respect the honesty first and foremost. Obviously, it takes a lot to own up to the decisions, and not something we, I think, traditionally see within the world of F1 sim racing. Drivers, throwing their hands up like the dude in Platoon, and accepting punishment with grace. Let's just talk as well, obviously, about the race in general. You started 11th, saw that incident, we'll call it that, at race start. What was going through your head when kind of all that carnage sort of unfolded early doors?
It was quite interesting because I actually was I wasn't even full throttle yet, and there was already people spinning. So I guess I got a bit lucky. I mean, I did react to it, and I avoided it. So I guess that's all I could have done, pretty much. But yeah, it was quite scary. I can tell you that for sure. Yeah.
And just the final one, talk us through those last few laps where you were trying to chase Otis down. You had Joris in there, you had Nelson Alves, who eventually there was contact with. Luera was in there as well, and I think he had contact with Joris as well. Looked like it was a very cagey final few laps, and then everything seemed to just explode at once.
Yeah, I mean, again, the fact that I caught the train so soon and I was able to overtake so easily really made my race. I think even in the end you could see I just had way better tires than Julian, and I think that was because I had a little bit less trouble overtaking, so I just had more tires left, and it was very difficult because as soon as the 130R happens, you just get such a speed boost. And I mean, I think Otis also realized. I think we both realized that. I mean, I could have maybe done something on the final lap, but I was always gonna struggle to attack. So I think Otis and I both knew that if we could stay like this, it was the best chance for both of us to get the best position. And yeah, with the 130R, like the speed boost you get, it's just so difficult to defend from that. I think we saw a couple of times people going side by side into the chicane, and it like tightens up, so it's so difficult. And I mean, I almost did the same to Otis as I did to Ruben at one point. So yeah, it really was tough. But I mean, again, apart from the few mistakes that I mentioned, I think I managed it as well as I could. So I'm really happy with that.
Smashing. Well, thank you very much for chatting to us. Great drive as well. Put on some great action for us out there too, and hopefully we'll see you in a week's time.
Yeah, hopefully. Well, I missed the race, but anyway, next time I'll drive.
We'll see you then, Taiko. Thank you.
Lovely.
Well, lovely. Yeah, it's owning up to a mistake. I mean, it was pretty cut and dry, to be honest. It's not like you could go, well, maybe I could get away with just trying to say, racing instant. But yeah, all respect.
Absolutely.
That one, yeah, another driver that put on a great show for us.
Yeah, I think it's tough, isn't it, when you know you're almost caught dead to rights at that moment, because you've got to either go down the route of you are lying your ass off to try and persuade the stewards to see some really convoluted point of view that you couldn't possibly have done it, or you just go, you know what, I did it, it was an accident, my fault, take the punishment and move on. And I actually respect those drivers that do that a lot more, because it saves all the hassle that goes along with it, with the decisions and everything like that.
Outbraked myself a little bit. Nope, turned in 4 degrees slightly too early, wasn't on the optimal run. But I'm delighted to say that also in the interview waiting room, we have got Mr. Otis Lawrence. Otis, welcome in. A race victory that I think a lot of us probably thought might have happened, but on that last lap, maybe having to work a little bit harder than you were expecting.
Yeah, it was a good fight at the end. It's great to be back in League Racing. Great to see you guys as well.
Good to see you.
Hope you enjoyed the race as well. It's very interesting. My first league race, of course, on these cars. So it was quite alien to me, especially the quali. When you have a little bit of a shaky foot, you can mess the battery up sometimes a little bit. And it's very hard to get everything right on this game. So it's going to take a lot of learning. But yeah, the race was great. Taiko did a great job. on the hard medium, and there was a big crash behind me on the last lap. And then me and Joris were side by side last lap. It was a great fight.
From a mentality point of view, because if that crash hadn't have happened, it looked like you were going to have everything under control because of the tyre advantage you had over Tycho, sorry. How easy is it to flip that switch to get back into race mode when you know, okay, I've got Joris who's definitely going to be closing me down, and he has got a significant pace advantage with the tyre offset that he's built up?
It was very difficult, honestly. I thought, when I saw those guys behind me, I started laughing, actually. But then I realized, Tomek was like, oh, well, Joris is on like a few laps fresher than you. And I was like, okay, I need to lock in. So I instantly locked in on my stream before I could see it if you watched my stream back. But yeah, it was difficult all of a sudden, but managed to make it work.
I'm going to take a comment you made slightly earlier on. First and foremost, congratulations, great race, and always good to see you back, Otis, and looking forward to the rest of the season ahead. Talking about the 26 cars, you've mentioned it's your first league race, and obviously there's a lot of development, a lot of learning to do in this regulation of an era. Heading into the seasons proper for league racing as we get into the big seasons, quote unquote, what's the preparation look like for you as not only a world champion, but of course as a renowned league racer, knowing that you've got to go out there and prove yourself almost again?
Well, honestly, I've got the same mentality as always, as last game, just to try and win and do as best as I can. Of course, I don't have as much pressure anymore that I've won a championship, but it doesn't mean that I want to stop trying. Of course, I'm going to keep pushing. It's going to get harder and harder every game cycle. New people are coming up all the time, and I just got to keep my game for the future. And yeah, it's very difficult, but it's going to be difficult for everyone. I think it was a lot of people doing their first race today, so yeah, a lot of people struggled, especially in the race, who did their first race, but I'm sure a lot of these people will be back, and you'll probably see the grid reshaped to what it used to be pre-26 regs.
And just lastly, just carrying on with that theme, from what you've had in these early stages, maybe for people that haven't driven these cars too much, what are the biggest adaptations and the biggest things that you have to try and acclimatize to compared to the ground effect era cars?
Well, it's all lift and coast in these cars, and it's really difficult to get it right, because if you make a small mistake on the battery, you can lose a lot of time, which I made in quali. And it's just super difficult to get the battery right always, especially the braking's a bit different on this game as well. The overall downforce of the cars, the high speed's a bit more understeer than before. So it's just a completely different car, completely different regulation. So honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if we see a lot of changes at the front end this game. But yeah, just gotta adapt to it. That's the fun of it. As much as we all complain and I complain, I don't really enjoy these type of cars. It's the same for everyone at the end of the day. I hope they change it, but if they don't, then stuff. You just gotta drive with them.
Got to put up and shut up is the way that they look at it. But thank you very much for jumping in with us, Otis, not just for this little chat, but for the race as well. And hopefully, we'll see you a few more times throughout the rest of this season. Pleasure.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Otis.
Thank you very much. Oh, really interesting insight, isn't it? When you speak to someone that has been, obviously the guys that we've got week in, week out are incredibly talented and incredibly quick. But when you speak to someone who's been right at the summit, right at the very top, to learn their perspective as well, it's really fascinating.
It really is. And let's not forget, he's been at the absolute top of his game over the last kind of 6 to 8 months. He's done absolutely fantastic, achieved almost everything inside of the world of F1 sim racing. And I think as we head into maybe the next few seasons, wants to go and do it more. He is young. He started young, and actually he's got such a great attitude going in towards it all. You see it in the emotions when he wins. You see it in the emotions when he loses. But he's just a fantastic driver and a really nice guy to chat to as well, which actually really helps our job out as well.
Makes our life
yeah
significantly easier. But that, I believe, is that. Not going to be speaking to Joris Krozen, unfortunately, but nice chat with Tycho Harding, nice chat with Otis Lawrence. And that will sign us off. Before we go, first, should we have a quick look at where we're heading in a week's time? Round number 6. We go from China, not from China, that was 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago. We go from Japan, geographically it's kind of there. We go from Japan to Spa. And that's going to be another interesting test. We've seen a couple of races at Spa, both of us, I think. And yeah, very interesting dynamics at play with the way that the battery works. Again, obviously, it's the big talking point the drivers have to get used to. But yeah, I think it might be a slightly different challenge compared to what we've got with, or compared to what we've had this week with Suzuka.
I think you've got that comparison aspect, very similar to what we had today through 130R down towards Cassio. Very similarly, when you run through Blanchimont and down towards Bus Stop, it's going to be that element where you have to save batteries. You especially head out of that second sector. From what I'm hearing, you have to charge right up to about 80, so about 70 to 90% for that final run down towards Bus Stop. So there's going to be a lot of charging through that second sector. You can do so quite well through Puon, and as you head down through the chicanes and all that sort of gubbins in the second sector. It's a weird circuit on this set of regulations because it's going to be burn in the first, charge in the second, sort of burn/charge in the third. It's going to be a great competition. Our drivers hopefully will give us a good show. They have provided fantastic shows over the course of the season so far, and more to come, hopefully.
Then we've got Sakir. I keep wanting to say the wrong circuit. I was going to say Suzuka then as well. Sakir at Bahrain. Should have just gone for Bahrain.
Yeah.
And then the Circuit of the Americas to round off that secondary block of 4 before the final quartet to round out this inaugural season. But echoing what you said there, action is drama, I think, is the word that we talk about. Box office battles going on throughout the field. We've had some really exciting racing. Yes, it's not always been the cleanest, which we always like clean battles, but I think for drama and for storylines, especially, and for those talking points, it still puts on a good show. And it's that, it's that almost real life F1 scenario where, like you mentioned Silverstone 2021, yes, it's not the cleanest moment that we get, and we almost wish that it didn't happen. Though I think those Hamilton fans are probably pretty happy that it did happen. But yeah, we get those talking points, we get those storylines, we get that proper feel that, okay, these guys are pushing really hard for this.
Absolutely. And I think if you look back and almost if we made a highlights package of the season, so many of those moments would be included, because I think that's something we don't ever do enough of in league racing, is we talk about the high points, we talk about the race wins, the pole positions and everything like that, but actually, as we've said over the course of the broadcast, those biggest talking points are sometimes the crashes like we saw at that final or the penultimate lap heading into the final corners, where 2 of the top 4 got taken out in the blink of an eye, and that will be the talking point heading forward. So I'd love to start to see that become more of a trend inside the league racing scene. I appreciate editing and time and software all kind of pay into that commogulation of why we don't do it, but I'd love to see that sort of be a factor across league racing.
Maybe watch this space. We'll see what goes on. But that brings us to the end of this broadcast for another week. For everybody that's still here, thank you very much for tuning in and hanging out. Hopefully it was a good show that the drivers were able to put on. And our final words from Tom Squared, #infiltrating every commentary box that you can find. TK, where can people find you on an internet to see what you're up to?
They call me TK pretty much every single social media. I don't really post that much that's interesting, so feel free to follow. No requirements to do so.
I disagree with that. Very interesting content that goes up. If you're interested in what I'm doing, Wilco.com's Instagram and TikTok. But it is a pleasure once again to bring this to you on a Tuesday. We'll be back in a week's time for, I nearly said Bahrain, stopped myself, for the Belgian Grand Prix at the Spa-Francorchamps circuit. And yeah, championship battle hotting up. Joris Krozen taking a decent step after problems for D'Ortenzio and the absence of Stevens. But we will see what is on offer in a week's time. Until then, enjoy the rest of your week. And we'll see you next Tuesday.